Lesson 1: Introduction to Human Anatomy and Physiology. Welcome. You have arrived at a quiet, safe place of learning. The day is behind you now. Its demands, its noise, and its urgencies have all faded into the background. Here, in this space we have created together, there is only the gentle pursuit of understanding. Tonight, we are going to embark on a journey inward, exploring the magnificent architecture of the human body. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. Your mind is perfectly capable of listening while you drift. In fact, that is often when we learn best, when the conscious mind rests and allows the deeper understanding to take root. So, settle in. Breathe comfortably. Let us begin our study of the self. To understand the complex, we must first appreciate the foundation. In this first lesson, we are simply establishing our map. We need to define what it actually means to study the human body, and we need to introduce the single, unifying principle that keeps you alive at this very moment. We are studying two distinct but inseparable sisters: anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the study of structure. It is the geography of the body. When we ask, "What is this?" or "Where is it located?" we are asking an anatomical question. It is the study of the shape of the heart, the location of the femur, and the architecture of the brain. Physiology, on the other hand, is the study of function. It is the how and the why. If anatomy is the study of the walls and wires of a house, physiology is the study of the electricity flowing through those wires and the life being lived within the rooms. You cannot truly separate them, for in biology, form always follows function. This is a concept I want you to let settle in your mind. It is called the principle of complementarity. Bones are hard and mineralized specifically because their function is to support and protect. The air sacs in your lungs are incredibly thin, specifically because their function is to let oxygen pass through them quickly. The structure exists to serve the function. As we travel through this course, whenever we see a shape in the body, we will ask, what job was this shape built to do? Now, visualize yourself. Not as a person with a name and a history, but as a physical object. If we were to zoom in, moving from the visible to the invisible, we would descend through the levels of structural organization. First, we see the organism, the total you. This living whole is made of systems. You are likely familiar with them: the skeletal system, the nervous system, the digestive system. These systems are not isolated. They are teams of organs working together. An organ is a distinct structure composed of at least two types of tissue. The stomach, for example, is an organ. It has muscle to churn food, nerves to control that churning, and a lining to contain the acid. Going deeper still, organs are made of tissues. A tissue is simply a group of similar cells working toward a common goal. We will explore the four fabrics of the human body in a later lesson. But for now, just imagine them as the distinct textures that make you up. And finally, if we look at the tissue under a high-powered microscope, we see the cell. The cell is the fundamental unit of life. Nothing smaller than a cell can truly be called alive. But we can go smaller. Cells are built from molecules, like water and protein, and those molecules are built from atoms. It is a humbling thought, is it not? That, at your most basic level, you are simply a collection of atoms, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, arranged in a very specific, beautiful order to create a thinking, feeling human being. This brings us to the most important concept in all of physiology. If you remember only one thing from our time together tonight, let it be this word: homeostasis. Homeostasis is the body's ability to maintain a relatively stable internal environment, even though the outside world is constantly changing. Imagine a thermostat in a cozy home during winter. The wind outside might blow, dropping the temperature, or the sun might come out, raising it. But inside, the thermostat is vigilant. When it gets too cold, the heater clicks on. When it gets warm enough, it clicks off. The house hovers around a comfortable set point. Your body does this constantly, thousands of times a day, without you ever asking it to. You maintain a body temperature of roughly 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. You maintain a specific blood pressure, a specific blood sugar level, and a specific pH balance. This is not a static, frozen state. It is a dynamic state of equilibrium, a gentle, oscillating balance, like a tightrope walker constantly making tiny adjustments to stay upright. This concept was popularized by the great physiologist Walter Cannon, though the idea goes back much further. He understood that disease is essentially the failure of homeostasis. When the body can no longer balance its temperature, you have a fever or hypothermia. When it can no longer balance its sugar, you have diabetes. Health is balance. So how does the body maintain this balance? It uses what we call homeostatic control mechanisms. The most common of these is the negative feedback loop. Do not let the word negative mislead you. In this context, it is a positive thing. It simply means the body negates the stimulus. Let us visualize a simple example. Imagine you are outside on a hot day. Heat is the stimulus. Specialized sensors in your skin and brain detect this rise in temperature. They send a signal to the control center, your brain. The brain processes this and realizes you are deviating from your set point. It sends a command to the effectors, in this case, your sweat glands. You begin to sweat. As the sweat evaporates, your body cools down. The original stimulus, the heat, is reduced. The system shuts off. The balance is restored. We also have something called positive feedback, but it is much rarer. Positive feedback amplifies the change. It pushes the body further away from the set point. This is used for explosive events that need to reach a climax rather than maintain stability. The classic example is childbirth. Contractions trigger the release of a hormone called oxytocin, which causes stronger contractions, which releases more oxytocin, and so on, building and building until the baby is born. Once the event is over, the body returns to its resting state. So you see, this is not just abstract theory. Homeostasis is the story of your daily life. It is the reason you feel thirsty after a salty meal. Your body is asking for water to dilute the salt and return your fluids to balance. It is the reason you breathe heavily after running up a flight of stairs. Your body is correcting an oxygen debt and expelling excess carbon dioxide. Every sensation of comfort or discomfort is usually your body communicating the status of its homeostasis. Even now, as you lie there, your body is engaged in a silent, tireless symphony of adjustments. Your heart rate is slowing down to match your relaxed state. Your body temperature is dipping slightly as you prepare for sleep. Your digestive system is quietly processing your last meal. You are a self-correcting miracle. Before we conclude, we must briefly touch upon the language of anatomy. Scientists and doctors need a precise map to navigate this complex terrain. To do this, they always assume the body is in the standard anatomical position. Visualize this with me. A person standing upright, feet slightly apart, and crucially, palms facing forward, with thumbs pointing away from the body. Why palms forward? Because when your palms face forward, the two bones in your forearm, the radius and the ulna, are parallel. When you turn your palms back, those bones cross over each other. To map the arm clearly, we need the bones uncrossed. So, whenever we speak of left or right or front or back, we always refer to the body in this open, receptive stance. Take a moment to let that idea find its place. You are a structure of atoms, cells, and organs, all working in unison to keep your internal world steady against the chaos of the external world. You are built for balance. We have established our map. We know the goal of the body is stability, but to understand how that stability is built, we must look at the raw materials. We must descend from the level of the body down to the level of the energy that binds it together. So, let us hold this thought of balance here, a complete piece of the puzzle. When we speak next, we will zoom into the invisible world. We will explore the chemistry that makes life possible. But for now, rest in the knowledge that your body knows exactly what to do. Lesson 2. The chemical basis of life. Welcome back. It is good to have you here again in our quiet space. In our last session, we looked at the human body from a high altitude. We spoke of the body as a whole, a unified organism constantly striving for balance or homeostasis. Tonight, we are going to change our perspective entirely. We are going to zoom in past the skin, past the organs, past the tissues, until we arrive at the very fabric of reality itself. We are going to explore the chemistry of life. Now, I know that for some, the word chemistry brings back memories of cold classrooms and complex equations. But tonight, we are not interested in memorizing periodic tables. We are interested in the story of what you are made of. At its heart, biology is simply chemistry in a very specific, beautiful, and highly organized order. So, let your mind relax as we descend into the invisible world of atoms and molecules. To understand the body, we must first understand matter. Matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. It is the stuff of the universe, and all matter is composed of elements. While there are over 100 elements in the universe, the human body is surprisingly economical. In fact, 96% of your body mass is made up of just 4 elements: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. You are, in a very literal sense, woven from the same basic star stuff as the rest of the cosmos. These elements are composed of atoms. Imagine an atom not as a diagram in a book, but as a tiny solar system. At the center is the nucleus, dense and heavy, containing protons and neutrons. Orbiting around this center, like planets whizzing through space, are electrons. It is the dance of these electrons that creates life. Atoms are generally social creatures. They dislike being alone. They want to connect with other atoms to become stable. When they connect, they form bonds. There are 3 types of relationships, or bonds, that matter to us. The first is an ionic bond. This is a relationship of theft. One atom completely steals an electron from another. This creates an electrical charge, like a magnet, and the 2 atoms stick together because opposites attract. This is how we get salts, like the sodium chloride in your kitchen. The second is a covalent bond. This is a relationship of sharing. Here, atoms do not steal, they hold hands. They share their electrons to ensure both are stable. These bonds are very strong. They are the sturdy ropes that tie the molecules of your body together. The third is a hydrogen bond. These are weak, fleeting attractions, more like a handshake than a marriage. But do not underestimate them. These fragile bonds are responsible for holding the shape of your DNA and for the unique properties of water. Speaking of water, this brings us to the most important molecule in your body. You are roughly 60 to 80% water. You are, in essence, a walking, thinking solution. Water is indispensable for life, for several reasons. First, it has a high heat capacity. This means it can absorb a vast amount of heat before its own temperature rises. This is why you can walk under the hot summer sun without your blood boiling. The water inside you acts as a shield, absorbing that energy to keep your internal climate stable. Water is also the universal solvent. Because water molecules are polar, meaning they have a slightly positive side and a slightly negative side, they are excellent at prying other molecules apart. This allows nutrients, gases, and wastes to dissolve in your blood and be transported to wherever they are needed. Without water, the highway system of your body would grind to a halt. Now that we have established the environment, the water, let us look at the structures floating within it. In the study of life, we divide chemicals into inorganic, like water and salts, and organic. Organic simply means they contain carbon. Carbon is a miraculous element. It is the perfect building block because it is electroneutral. It never loses or gains electrons. It only shares them. It can form long chains, rings, and complex trees. It is the backbone of the four molecules of life. First, we have carbohydrates. Carbo meaning carbon, hydrate meaning water. These are the sugars and starches. Think of carbohydrates as your body's fuel. The smallest unit is a monosaccharide, or one sugar, like glucose. When you link many of these together, you get a polysaccharide, like glycogen. Your muscles store glycogen like a squirrel stores nuts for winter, ready to be broken down into glucose the moment you need energy. Second, we have lipids. You know these as fats. Lipids are hydrophobic, meaning they fear water. If you pour oil into water, it separates. This property is crucial. Because they do not dissolve in water, lipids form the perfect barriers. Every single cell in your body is wrapped in a membrane made of lipids. They are the walls that define where you begin and the outside ends. They also insulate your organs and store vast amounts of energy. Third, and perhaps most complex, are proteins. If carbohydrates are the fuel and lipids are the walls, proteins are the workers. They do everything. They are the construction materials, building your bones and muscles. They are the transporters, carrying oxygen in your blood. They are the warriors, fighting off infections. Proteins are built from long chains of smaller units called amino acids. There are 20 different types of amino acids. Think of them like the 26 letters of the alphabet. Depending on how you arrange those letters, you can write a simple grocery list or a Shakespearean sonnet. Your body arranges amino acids to create thousands of different proteins. But a protein is not just a long string. It folds upon itself, twisting and turning into a specific, three-dimensional shape. This shape determines its function. If the shape is lost, perhaps due to high heat or acid, the protein is denatured. It unravels and can no longer do its job. This is what happens to the protein in an egg white when you cook it. It changes from clear and runny to white and solid. Within the world of proteins, there is a special class we must honor: enzymes. An enzyme is a catalyst. In the chemistry of the body, reactions often want to happen, but they happen too slowly to sustain life. It might take years for a certain food molecule to break down on its own. Enzymes solve this. They act like a specialized lock that only fits a specific key. They grab the molecules, bring them together in the perfect position, and force the reaction to happen instantly. Then, unchanged, the enzyme moves on to the next molecule. Without these biological accelerators, the fire of life would simply flicker out. Finally, the fourth category is nucleic acids. These are the largest molecules in the body. They are the architects. Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, is the master blueprint. It lives in the nucleus of your cells and holds the instructions for building every protein we just discussed. It decides whether you have blue eyes or brown, curly hair or straight. It is the hard drive of your existence. So, take a moment to synthesize this. You are not a solid block of matter. You are a fluid, dynamic chemistry set. When you eat a piece of bread, your body uses enzymes to break those long carbohydrate chains into simple glucose. That glucose enters your blood, dissolves in the water of your plasma, and travels to a cell. There, it is burned to create energy. That energy is used to build new proteins, to repair a muscle you use today. Every thought you are having right now, every beat of your heart, is the result of ions moving, bonds breaking, and new bonds forming. It is a ceaseless, microscopic dance of creation and destruction, all balanced perfectly to keep you, the macroscopic you, alive and comfortable. Let the complexity of that chemistry fade for a moment. Do not worry about memorizing the names of the bonds or the types of lipids. Just hold on to the image of these molecules, the sugars, the fats, the proteins, and the DNA floating in the warm, watery environment of your body. Molecules, as clever as they are, do not simply float randomly. To create life, they must be organized into a container. They must be gathered together to build a room where the business of living can take place. We call this room the cell. So, let us rest here. At the atomic level, we have gathered our building materials. When we speak next, we will act as the architect. We will take these bricks and build the fundamental unit of life. For now, let the atoms drift and let your mind rest. Lesson 3. Cellular Structure and Function. Welcome back to our sanctuary of learning. In our previous sessions, we have looked at the human body from the very high vantage point of the whole organism, and we have dived down to the very deepest depths of atomic chemistry. We have gathered our raw materials, the water, the proteins, the fats, and the salts. But a pile of bricks is not a house, and a beaker of chemicals is not a life. To create a human being, those chemicals must be organized into a specific, functioning unit. Tonight, we step into the room where life actually begins. We are going to explore the cell. The cell is the smallest unit of any living thing. You contain roughly 30 trillion of them, buzzing with electricity and intent right now. It is a world of incredible complexity, yet it operates with a silent, elegant logic. So, let your imagination shrink down. Let us become small enough to walk through the gates of this microscopic city. Visualizing a cell can be difficult because it is so alien to our daily experience. So, I want you to picture a walled city. This city is bustling with industry. It has a government, it has power plants, and it has a waste management system. But instead of being built on land, this city floats in a warm, salty sea. The first thing we encounter is the city wall, known as the plasma membrane. This is not a rigid, stone wall like a fortress. It is fluid, flexible, and dynamic. It is made primarily of those lipids we discussed in our last lesson, specifically a phospholipid bilayer. Imagine a sea of fat molecules, bobbing and weaving like water. Floating in this sea are massive proteins, like icebergs. Some of these proteins act as channels, opening and closing to let specific things in. Others act as name tags, telling the rest of the body, I belong here. The membrane is selectively permeable. This means it is a discerning gatekeeper. It does not let just anything enter the city. It allows nutrients like oxygen and glucose to pass through, but it blocks unwanted intruders and keeps vital cellular components from leaking out. It is the defining boundary between you and the rest of the universe. Once we pass through this membrane, we find ourselves in the cytoplasm. This is the atmosphere of the cell. It consists of a jelly-like fluid called cytosol, which is mostly water and dissolved nutrients. Floating in this fluid, like buildings in our city, are the organelles. Organelle simply means little organ. Just as your large body has a heart and lungs, The cell has these tiny organs to perform specific tasks. Dominating the center of the city, like a grand library or a city hall, is the nucleus. This is the control center. It is usually the largest organelle, protected by its own double-walled envelope. Inside this vault lie the blueprints for the entire city. Your DNA. The DNA contains the instructions for building every protein your body needs. It is the master architect, issuing orders that determine everything from the color of your eyes to the enzymes in your stomach. But a city cannot run on orders alone. It needs energy. Scattered throughout the cytoplasm are bean-shaped structures called mitochondria. These are the power plants. They are fascinating because they have two membranes, an outer skin and a folded inner maze. Within that maze, a complex chemical reaction takes place. The mitochondria take the glucose from your food and the oxygen from your breath and convert them into a molecule called ATP. Think of ATP as the currency of the cell. Nothing happens in the city without paying for it. Do you want to flex a muscle? That costs ATP. Do you want to send a nerve signal? That costs ATP. The mitochondria are tirelessly printing this money, 24 hours a day, to keep the economy of your life running. Now, let us look at the industry of the cell. If the nucleus is the architect and the mitochondria are the power plants, who is doing the actual manufacturing? That job belongs to the ribosomes. These are tiny, dark specks found floating freely in the cytosol or attached to membranes. They are the factories. They take the orders sent out from the nucleus and stitch together amino acids to form proteins. Many of these ribosomes are attached to a vast network of tunnels called the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. The ER winds through the cytoplasm like a conveyor belt system. We have the rough ER, which is covered in ribosomes and looks bumpy under a microscope. This is where proteins destined for export are made. Then we have the smooth ER, which has no ribosomes. The smooth ER is a specialized workshop. It builds lipids, fats, and also helps detoxify drugs and pesticides. Your liver cells are packed with smooth ER because they are responsible for cleaning your blood. Once the proteins and fats are made, they need to be packaged and shipped. This is the job of the Golgi apparatus. Visually, the Golgi looks like a stack of flattened pancakes or dinner plates. It is the cell's post office. It receives the raw products from the ER, modifies them, tags them with a destination, and packages them into tiny bubbles called vesicles. These vesicles then float to the membrane to be released outside the cell, or they travel to other parts of the city. Finally, every efficient city needs a way to deal with waste. This is the role of the lysosomes. These are spherical sacs filled with powerful digestive enzymes. They are the recycling centers and the janitors. When an organelle gets old and breaks down, or when a bacteria invades the cell, the lysosome swallows it. The enzymes inside dismantle the waste, breaking it back down into raw materials that the cell can reuse. It is a perfect system of sustainability. Take a moment to let the scale of this wash over you. We have described just one cell, yet you have trillions of them. In the time it took me to describe the mitochondria, millions of your cells divided, repaired themselves, or generated the energy needed for your heart to beat next. When you feel tired, what you are really feeling is a depletion of resources at this cellular level. When you feel hungry, your cells are crying out for the raw materials to run their power plants. You are not a single entity. You are a galaxy of these tiny, living worlds. And incredibly, they all work in unison. The heart muscle cell contracts at the exact right moment because its membrane allowed ions to flow. The stomach cell releases acid because its Golgi apparatus packaged it correctly. The logic is flawless. We must also appreciate that not all cells are the same. While they all share these basic structures, the nucleus, the mitochondria, the the membrane, they are specialized. A sperm cell looks like a tadpole because its job is to swim. A nerve cell looks like a long wire because its job is to transmit. A red blood cell has actually ejected its nucleus to make more room for oxygen. They are diverse citizens, all adapted to their specific trade within the community of you. This city of the cell is a marvel of engineering. It is self-sustaining, self-repairing, and self-replicating. But a single cell is lonely. A single cell, floating in the ocean, can only do so much. To build a creature as complex as a human being, cells cannot live in isolation. They must reach out. They must join hands. When cells of a similar structure and function group together to perform a bigger task, they transform. They become something stronger. They become a fabric. We call this fabric tissue. So, let us leave the microscopic interior of the cell. Let us step back out through the plasma membrane and watch as these individual units come together to weave the tapestry of the human form. That is where we will begin next time. For now, visualize those trillions of tiny lights inside you, glowing with the energy of life, keeping watch while you rest. Lesson 4. Tissues, the living fabric. Welcome back to our quiet study. Take a moment to settle in, letting the weight of the day sink into the mattress beneath you. In our last session, we made ourselves very small. We walked through the gates of the cell, marveling at the microscopic factories and power plants that hum with life inside of you. We saw the individual bricks. Tonight, we are going to start laying those bricks. We are going to watch as individual cells reach out, join hands, and weave themselves together to create something stronger, something grander. Tonight, we study tissues. This branch of anatomy is called histology. It is the study of the textures of life. When you look in the mirror, you see a whole person, but if you were to look closer, you would see that you are a mosaic. You are a tapestry woven from 4 distinct types of thread. Everything in your body, from the lining of your stomach to the tendon in your heel, from the grey matter of your brain to the muscle of your heart, is made of just these 4 primary materials. Understanding them is like understanding the primary colors before painting a masterpiece. So, let us unfurl this living fabric and examine it, thread by thread. The first of our 4 materials is epithelial tissue. The word epithelium comes from Greek roots meaning covering, and that is exactly what it is. Epithelial tissue is the boundary maker. It covers the body's surface as your skin, and it lines your internal cavities. If you could trace your finger down your throat, into your stomach, and through your intestines, you would be touching epithelial tissue the entire way. It separates the inside of the body from the outside world. Imagine a cobblestone street. That is what epithelial tissue often looks like under a microscope, sheet upon sheet of cells packed tightly together, with very little space between them. This tightness is crucial because its primary job is protection and regulation. It decides what gets in and what gets out. Epithelial tissue has a fascinating quality called polarity. This means the cells have a distinct top and bottom. The top surface, called the apical surface, faces the open space, the air around your skin, or the hollow inside of your stomach. It is the surface that interacts with the world. The bottom surface, called the basal surface, is anchored deep into the body. It sits on a sticky layer called the basement membrane, which acts like double-sided tape, holding the sheet of cells firmly to the tissues underneath. We classify this tissue by 2 simple questions: how many layers are there, and what shape are the cells? If there is just one single, thin layer, we call it simple. This is useful for filtration. For example, the air sacs in your lungs are made of simple epithelium so thin that oxygen can slip right through it. If there are many layers stacked on top of each other, like a wall of bricks. We call it stratified. This is built for protection. Your skin is stratified because it needs to withstand the friction of the world. As for shape, the cells can be flat like tiles, squamous, boxy like cubes, cuboidal, or tall like pillars, columnar. It is a simple, elegant logic. Form follows function. Now we move to the second type, and this is the most abundant and diverse tissue in the entire body, connective tissue. If epithelial tissue is the covering, connective tissue is the support. It binds, supports, protects, insulates, and transports. But connective tissue is strange. Unlike the tightly packed bricks of epithelium, connective tissue consists of cells scattered far apart. Imagine a bowl of fruit suspended in gelatin. The fruit represents the cells, and the gelatin represents the extracellular matrix. This matrix is the magic ingredient. It is a non-living substance secreted by the cells, and it fills the empty spaces between them. This matrix determines the character of the tissue. In some places, the matrix is liquid, and we get blood. Yes, blood is a connective tissue. Its matrix is plasma, and its cells float freely within it, transporting oxygen. In other places, the matrix is gel-like and soft, forming adipose tissue or body fat, which insulates you and cushions your organs. In other places, the matrix is packed with tough, rope-like collagen fibers, forming tendons and ligaments that can withstand immense pulling forces. And finally, in its most rigid form, the matrix becomes calcified and hard as rock. This creates bone. Pause for a moment and consider that wonder. The blood flowing through your veins and the bone protecting your brain are cousins. They are both connective tissues, defined not by the cells themselves, but by the environment those cells create around them. The third fabric is muscle tissue. This is the tissue of movement. It has a unique ability that no other tissue has. It can contract. It can shorten with force. We have three types. First, there is skeletal muscle. These are the muscles attached to your bones. They are voluntary, meaning you can choose to move them. Under a microscope, they look striped or striated due to the precise alignment of their protein fibers. Second, there is cardiac muscle. This is found only in the walls of the heart. It is also striped, but unlike skeletal muscle, it is involuntary. You do not have to tell your heart to beat. It does so on its own, driven by an internal pacemaker. Third, there is smooth muscle. This lines the walls of your hollow organs, your stomach, your bladder, your blood vessels. It has no stripes, hence the name smooth. It works silently in the background, churning food and regulating blood pressure without you ever noticing. Finally, we arrive at the fourth and most complex fabric, nervous tissue. This is the tissue of control. It forms your brain, your spinal cord, and the vast network of nerves threading through your limbs. Nervous tissue is made of two types of cells. The star of the show is the neuron. These are highly specialized cells that generate and conduct electrical impulses. They are the wires of the body. They have long tails that can stretch for feet, carrying messages from the spine to the toe. But neurons are delicate divas. They cannot feed themselves or clean up their own waste. They need a support crew. That is the job of the neuroglia, or simply glial cells. These are the supporting actors. They surround the neurons, insulate them, feed them, and protect them. There are actually far more glial cells in your brain than neurons. If the neuron is the king, the neuroglia are the kingdom that sustains him. So, as you lie there, try to visualize these four textures blending together to make you. Feel the skin resting against the sheets. That is your stratified squamous epithelium, layer upon layer of flat cells protecting you from the environment. Feel the softness of your arm. That is the adipose connective tissue providing a cushion. Feel the heavy, relaxed weight of your limbs. That is your skeletal muscle tissue, currently at rest, waiting for your command. And the fact that you can feel any of this at all, that is your nervous tissue, sensing the pressure and temperature and sending a comforting report to your brain. You are a collaboration, a collection of linings, supports, engines, and wires. None of them can survive alone. The muscle needs the nerve to tell it when to move. The nerve needs the connective tissue to hold it in place. The connective tissue needs the blood to feed it, and the blood needs the epithelial lining of the vessels to keep it on track. It is a perfect system of mutual reliance. These tissues do not just stack on top of each other, they interweave to form organs. And the largest, most visible organ of all is the one that wraps the entire package. We have spoken of the epithelium that covers us. Next time, we will look at the complete system that forms your outer boundary. We will explore the skin, not just as a layer, but as a complex, living shield that breathes, feels, and protects. So, let the idea of the fabric settle. You are well woven. You are held together by biology's strongest threads. Rest now in the safety of that structure. When we meet again, we will study the shield. Lesson 5. The Integumentary System. Welcome back. It is a pleasure to have you return to our quiet study. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, let the tension of the day release from your shoulders. In our last session, we wove the fabrics of the body. We looked at the 4 tissues that make up every part of you. We saw the linings, the supports, the muscles, and the wires. Tonight, we are going to take those fabrics and stitch them into the first complete system of our course. We are going to explore the integumentary system. That is a heavy, scientific word for something you know very well: your skin, your hair, and your nails. It is easy to think of the skin as just a wrapper, a simple casing to keep your insides from falling out. But it is so much more than that. It is your shield. It is your radiator. It is your first line of communication with the physical world. It is the largest organ you possess, a living, breathing spacesuit that allows you to survive in a harsh universe. So, settle in and let us examine this miraculous coat you wear every day. To understand the skin, we must visualize it in layers, like the earth itself. There is a crust, a mantle, and a core. The surface layer, the part you can see and touch, is called the epidermis. The word means upon the dermis. It is surprisingly thin, yet it is incredibly tough. It is made of that stratified squamous epithelium we discussed in the last lesson, layer upon layer of flat cells stacked like shingles on a roof. The life of a skin cell in the epidermis is a journey. New cells are born in the deepest layer, the stratum basale, which sits right on top of the blood supply. These young cells are plump and healthy, but as new cells are born underneath them, they are pushed upward, away from the nutrients. As they rise, they undergo a transformation. They fill up with a tough, water-resistant protein called keratin. By the time they reach the surface, they have died and become flattened, hard scales. It sounds somber, but this is by design. The skin you see in the mirror is actually a shield of dead cells. They are sacrificial defenders. When you scrub your arm or towel off after a shower, you are shedding thousands of these dead cells. But it does not hurt because they have already done their duty. They protect the living, fragile world underneath from bacteria, chemicals, and abrasion. You completely replace this outer coat roughly every month, a constant cycle of renewal. Beneath this tough outer shell lies the dermis. This is the true skin. It is much thicker, made of strong, flexible connective tissue. If the epidermis is the shingles on the roof, the dermis is the wooden beams and rafters holding the house up. It is rich with collagen fibers, which give your skin its strength. and elastin fibers, which allow it to stretch and snap back. The dermis is where the action is. It is teeming with life. While the epidermis has no blood vessels of its own, the dermis is woven with miles of capillaries, feeding the skin and regulating your temperature. It houses the sweat glands, the oil glands, the hair follicles, and the nerve endings. It is a bustling industrial zone hidden just beneath the surface. And finally, anchoring everything to the muscles below is the hypodermis, or subcutaneous layer. This is not strictly part of the skin, but it is its foundation. It consists mostly of adipose tissue, soft, yellow body fat. Think of this as the insulation in the walls of your house. It keeps your body heat in, acts as a shock absorber for your organs, and stores energy for a rainy day. Let us look closer at some of the specialized residents of this system. Deep in the epidermis, there are artists at work called melanocytes. These cells produce a pigment called melanin. Melanin is fascinating because it acts as a natural parasol. When you walk out into the sunlight, ultraviolet radiation attacks your skin. This radiation can shatter your DNA. The melanocytes respond by producing more melanin and sending it up to the surface cells. The pigment arranges itself over the nucleus of the cell like a tiny umbrella, shading the DNA from the harmful rays. This is why we tan. A tan is not just a color, it is your body's attempt to shield its most precious genetic cargo. Then, consider the sweat glands. You have millions of them. They are your personal air conditioning system. When your body temperature rises even a fraction of a degree, these glands secrete water onto the surface of your skin. As that water evaporates into the air, it pulls heat away from your body, cooling you down. It is a simple principle of physics used to save your life. We also find the sebaceous glands, usually attached to hair follicles. They produce an oily substance called sebum. You might think of oil as a nuisance, but sebum is nature's perfect lotion. It keeps your hair from becoming brittle, it keeps your skin soft and pliable, and it even contains chemicals that kill bacteria. Without it, your skin would crack and tear like old leather. And we cannot forget the sensors. Buried in the dermis are specialized nerve endings. Some, like the Meissner's corpuscles, are incredibly sensitive to light touch. They let you feel the brush of a feather. Others, like the Pacinian corpuscles, lie deeper and respond to deep pressure or vibration. There are free nerve endings that sense pain and temperature. This network turns your skin into a massive data collection center, constantly reporting the state of the world to your brain. Take a moment to feel this system working right now. Feel the sheets against your legs. That is your epidermis contacting the world. Feel the warmth of the blanket. That is your thermoregulation at work. Your blood vessels in the dermis are likely dilating slightly, bringing warm blood to the surface to release heat, or perhaps constricting to keep that heat near your core, depending on the room's temperature. This system also connects you to the sun in a vital way. When sunlight hits your skin, it triggers the production of vitamin D. This is the only vitamin your body can make on its own, but it needs the sky to do it. Vitamin D is essential for absorbing calcium. So, in a very real way, the strength of your bones depends on the health of your skin. It is all connected. Think of your skin as a boundary. It defines where you begin and where the universe ends. It keeps the water inside you from evaporating into the air, effectively keeping you from drying out like a prune. It keeps the bacteria on your pillow from entering your bloodstream. It is a silent, resilient guardian that repairs itself when cut and stretches when you grow. Your skin is a marvel of flexibility and protection. But skin is soft. It is pliable. If you were only made of skin and organs, you would be a shapeless puddle on the floor. To stand upright, to move, to have a distinct human form, This soft casing needs a rigid framework. It needs something hard to drape over. So, now that we have built the walls and the covering, we must build the beams. We must construct the pillars that hold the temple up. In our next lesson, we will journey beneath the dermis, past the muscle, all the way to the white, mineralized core of the body. We will study the skeleton. For now, rest in the safety of your skin. Feel it holding you together, warm and intact. You are safe within this shield. Let your mind drift, and I will see you when we build the bones. Lesson 6. The Skeletal System. Welcome back. Come into the warmth of our study. Let the door latch behind you, shutting out the noise of the world. Tonight, we are going to look beneath the surface. In our last lesson, we examined the skin, the soft, pliable shield that wraps you. We spoke of its sensitivity and its flexibility. But if you were made only of skin and soft tissues, you would be unable to stand. You would be unable to walk, to grasp, or to lift. To exist in a world of gravity, you need a frame. Tonight, we study the skeletal system. It is easy to think of bones as dry, dead things, white relics left behind in the earth long after life has faded. But inside of you, right now, your bones are incredibly alive. They are pink with blood, teeming with cells, and constantly changing. They are the white, mineralized architecture that gives you your human shape. They are the pillars of the temple. So, find a comfortable position, feel the weight of your body resting against the bed, and let us strip away the soft layers to reveal the structure underneath. An adult human skeleton is composed of 206 individual bones. That sounds like a chaotic jumble of parts, but there is a beautiful symmetry to it. We organize these bones into two distinct divisions, each with a different purpose. First, we have the axial skeleton. Imagine a line running straight down the center of your body. This is the axis. It includes the skull, the vertebral column, your spine, and the rib cage. The primary job of the axial skeleton is protection. It is the heavy armor. The skull forms a helmet for the delicate brain. The vertebrae form a bony tunnel for the spinal cord. The ribs form a cage for the heart and lungs. These bones are not designed for great range of motion. They are designed for stability and defense. Attached to this central axis is the second division, the appendicular skeleton. The word comes from appendage, meaning something attached. This includes the bones of your arms and legs, as well as the girdles, the shoulder, and the pelvis that anchor them to the center. If the axial skeleton is about protection, the appendicular skeleton is about movement. These are the levers. The long bones of your legs act as pillars to support your weight, while the intricate bones of your hands allow you to manipulate the world with precision. Let us look at a single bone to understand the material itself. Picture the femur, the large bone of your thigh. If you were to hold it, it would feel smooth and solid. This outer surface is covered by a tough, living membrane called the periosteum. It is rich with nerve fibers and blood vessels, which anchor themselves into the bone. This is why a break hurts so deeply. The bone itself can feel. Beneath this skin lies the compact bone. This is the hard, dense, white layer you see in museums. It looks solid, but under a microscope, it is riddled with tiny tunnels called Haversian canals, carrying blood and nerves deep into the mineral rock. Inside this hard shell, we find something quite different. Spongy bone. It looks like a honeycomb or a coral reef, a lattice of tiny, jagged beams called trabeculae. This design is genius engineering. It makes the bone incredibly strong but light enough for you to move. If your bones were solid rock all the way through, you would be too heavy to stand up. We must now venture into the hollow centers of your bones. Here lies one of the body's greatest secrets. The skeleton is not just structural, it is a factory. Inside the cavities of your spongy bone is bone marrow. We have two types. Red marrow is the nursery of life. It is here, hidden safely inside your ribs, your spine, and the ends of your long bones, that all your blood cells are born. Red blood cells to carry oxygen, white blood cells to fight infection, and platelets to stop bleeding, they all originate from the quiet darkness of the bone. Then there is yellow marrow. This is found in the central shafts of your long arm and leg bones. It is essentially stored fat. It is a chemical energy reserve, waiting for a time of famine that hopefully never comes. Perhaps the most surprising fact about the skeleton is that it is dynamic. It is constantly recycling itself. You do not have the same skeleton you had 10 years ago. Every day, a dedicated team of cells is at work. One group, called osteoclasts, acts like a demolition crew. They use acid to dissolve old or damaged bone mineral, releasing calcium back into the blood. Following close behind them is a crew of builders called osteoblasts. They lay down fresh collagen and mineralize it, creating new, strong bone. This process is called bone remodeling. It happens ceaselessly. If you start lifting heavy weights, your bones detect the increased stress. The builders get to work, adding more mineral to the stressed areas, making the bones thicker and stronger to handle the load. If you are bedridden, the demolition crew takes over, and the bones become lighter. Your skeleton is literally shaping itself to match your lifestyle. It is listening to how you live. Consider the calcium in your bones. It is not just there to make them hard. Calcium is essential for your nerves to fire and your muscles to contract. If your diet is low in calcium, your body does not panic. It simply goes to the bank. Your skeleton is a massive savings account for minerals. The blood borrows calcium from the bone to keep your heart beating today, promising to pay it back later when you drink a glass of milk. It is a selfless system, prioritizing immediate survival over structural integrity. So, as you lie there, feel the solidity of your frame. Feel the curve of your ribs rising and falling with your breath, a protective cage that expands and recoils. Feel the length of your spine, a stack of individual vertebrae cushioned by discs, protecting the superhighway of your nervous system. You are supported. You are held up by a structure that is stronger than concrete, yet light enough to run. The skeleton provides the leverage. It provides the protection. It creates the blood. But a skeleton, for all its wonder, cannot move itself. It is a system of levers, waiting for a force to act upon them. A puppet needs strings. A machine needs an engine. To animate this frame, to lift the arm, or turn the head, we need a tissue capable of generating force. We need to drape this white architecture in red meat. So, let the image of the still, white skeleton rest in your mind. It is the silent, sturdy partner. When we meet next, we will attach the cables. We will study the engine of the body. We will explore the muscular system. For now, rest in the knowledge that you have a strong foundation. You are built to last. Lesson 7. The Muscular System. Welcome back to our sanctuary. Take a moment to adjust your position. Feel the weight of your limbs sinking into the mattress. In our last session, we built the white, silent architecture of the skeleton. We constructed the pillars and the levers that give your body its shape. But a skeleton, for all its strength, is motionless. It is a frame waiting for an engine. It is a puppet waiting for its strings. Tonight, we are going to animate that frame. We are going to study the muscular system. This is the flesh and blood of the body. It is the red vitality that wraps around your bones and allows you to interact with the world. Movement is the most fundamental sign of animal life. To move is to find food. to find shelter, to communicate, and to survive. Everything you have ever done, every word you have spoken, every step you have taken, every smile you have shared was achieved through the contraction of a muscle. So, let us look under the skin and examine the engines that drive us. When we speak of muscle, we are actually speaking of three distinct types of tissue, each with its own specific personality and purpose. First, there is skeletal muscle. This is what you typically think of as meat. It is the red, bulky tissue attached to your bones. It is the largest component of your body by weight. Skeletal muscle is voluntary, meaning it answers to your conscious will. If you decide to raise your hand, your brain sends a command, and this muscle obeys. Under a microscope, it looks striped or striated, like a candy cane. These stripes are not decoration. They are the result of the precise alignment of the proteins inside, lined up for maximum pulling power. Second, there is cardiac muscle. This is found in only one place in the universe, the walls of your heart. Like skeletal muscle, it is striped because it also needs to generate great force. But unlike skeletal muscle, it is involuntary. You do not have to think about your heartbeat. It happens on its own, driven by an internal pacemaker. Cardiac cells are unique because they branch and connect to each other deeply, allowing an electrical signal to wash over the heart in a wave, ensuring the whole organ beats as one synchronized unit. Third, there is smooth muscle. This is the humble worker of the interior. It lines your hollow organs, your stomach, your intestines, your bladder, and your blood vessels. It has no stripes. It looks smooth and tapered. It moves slowly and rhythmically, churning food through your digestion or regulating the flow of blood. Like the heart, it works without your permission, silently managing the housekeeping of the body while you think of other things. But tonight, let us focus on the skeletal muscle, the system that moves your frame. The most important rule of muscle mechanics is simple. Muscles only pull. They never push. Visualize the muscles in your upper arm. You have the biceps on the front and the triceps on the back. When you want to bend your elbow, the biceps contract. They get shorter and bulge, pulling the forearm up. But the biceps cannot push the arm back down. To straighten your arm, the biceps must relax, and the triceps must contract to pull the arm the other way. This is called an antagonistic pair. Your entire body is rigged with these opposing pulleys. For every movement, there is a muscle to do it, and a partner waiting to undo it. To understand how a muscle actually generates this force, we must shrink down to the microscopic level. A whole muscle is like a heavy cable. If you cut it open, you see bundles within bundles. The muscle is made of fascicles. Fascicles are made of muscle fibers, and muscle fibers are made of tiny threads called myofibrils. It is within these myofibrils that the magic happens. We find a structure called the sarcomere. The sarcomere is the smallest functional unit of a muscle. It is the engine room. Inside the sarcomere are two types of protein filaments arranged in parallel lines. There are thin filaments made of a protein called actin and thick filaments made of a protein called myosin. Imagine a team of rowers in a boat. The actin filaments are the water. The myosin filaments are the oars. When the signal comes to contract, the myosin heads reach up and grab the actin. They form a cross bridge. Then, in a synchronized motion, they pull. They drag the actin filaments inward towards the center of the sarcomere. This is known as the sliding filament theory. The proteins do not shrink, they slide past each other. Millions of these tiny myosin heads, pulling and releasing, cause the entire muscle fiber to shorten. When billions of fibers shorten at once, you get the strength to lift a suitcase or the delicacy to thread a needle. This process is chemically expensive. It requires two things. First, it needs calcium. Calcium acts like the key that unlocks the actin, exposing the handle so the myosin can grab it. This is why you need calcium in your diet, not just for bones, but to allow your muscles to work. Second, it needs energy in the form of ATP. ATP is fascinating here because it is not used to pull, it is actually used to let go. It takes energy to detach the myosin head so it can grab again. This explains the phenomenon of rigor mortis. After death, the body stops making ATP. Without energy, the myosin heads cannot detach from the actin. The muscles lock in place, becoming rigid until the proteins themselves eventually break down. It is a somber reminder that relaxation is an active, energy-consuming process. This machinery is not just for movement, it is your furnace. Muscle contraction is not perfectly efficient. A lot of the energy is lost as heat. In fact, skeletal muscles generate as much as 85% of your body heat. When you are cold, your body forces your muscles to contract rapidly and rhythmically. We call this shivering. It is your body's way of revving the engine to warm up the house. Furthermore, your muscles are never truly off. Even now, as you lie in bed, you have what we call muscle tone. Your brain is sending a constant, low-level stream of signals to your muscles, keeping them slightly tense, ready for action. It is like a car idling at a stoplight. If you lost this tone, you would collapse. It stabilizes your joints and maintains your posture. Think about muscle memory. When you learn to ride a bike or play the piano, you are not just training your brain, you are training these neural pathways to the muscles. You are making the firing of those motor units more efficient, more synchronized. The clumsiness of a beginner is just a disorganized signal. The grace of a master is a symphony of perfect timing, where the exact number of fibers contract at the exact right millisecond. So, we have the skeleton, the sturdy frame. We have the muscles, the powerful engines rigged to the levers. We have the fuel, the ATP. But an engine cannot run itself. A puppet cannot dance without a puppeteer. The muscle is a loyal soldier. It waits for a command. It will not contract, not even a millimeter, without an electrical order. Where does that order come from? How does the thought "I want to move" travel from your mind to your hand? To answer that, we must look at the body's communication network. We must explore the wires that carry the spark of life. So, let your muscles relax. Let the tension drain out of them. Imagine those billions of tiny myosin heads letting go of their ropes, allowing the fibers to lengthen and rest. You are heavy. You are still. When we speak next, we will light the spark. We will study the nervous system. Lesson 8. Nervous tissue. Welcome back. It is good to see you return to our quiet study. Let the stillness of the room settle around you. In our previous sessions, we have acted as builders. We constructed the sturdy white framework of the skeleton to resist gravity. We draped that frame in the red, powerful engines of the muscular system to provide force. We have a body that is supported and capable of movement. But if we were to stop there, we would have nothing but a mannequin. The skeleton cannot stand on its own. The muscle cannot contract without an order. The body is a machine, yes, but a machine is useless without a driver. It needs a spark. It needs a command center to process information and a network of wires to deliver instructions. Tonight, we begin our study of the most complex, mysterious, and elegant system in the human body, the nervous system. We will start at the very beginning with the single cell that makes thought, emotion, and movement possible. We are going to look at the neuron. The nervous system is the master controlling and communicating system of the body. Every thought you have, every sensation you feel, and every movement you make is the result of these cells talking to one another. To understand how they do this, we must look at the tissue itself. Nervous tissue is crowded. It is packed tight with cells. But unlike the other tissues we have studied, these cells fall into two very distinct categories. It is a relationship of royalty and servants. First, we have the neuroglia, or simply glial cells. The word glia literally means glue. For a long time, scientists thought these cells were just the packing material, the putty that held the nerves together. But we now know they are the unsung heroes of the brain. They outnumber the neurons roughly 10 to 1. They are the pit crew for the race car. They surround the delicate neurons, feeding them, insulating them, and cleaning up their waste. Without the glial cells, the neurons would die in minutes. But the star of the show, the cell that carries the message, is the neuron. I want you to visualize a neuron. It does not look like the blocky or round cells we saw in the skin or muscles. It looks like an ancient, gnarled tree. At the center is the cell body, or soma. This is the heart of the cell, containing the nucleus. It is the factory that keeps the cell alive. Extending out from this body are branches called dendrites. The word comes from the Greek for tree. These dendrites are the listeners. They reach out into the surroundings, waiting to catch a signal from other neurons. They are covered in tiny spines, maximizing their surface area to receive as much information as possible. Then, extending from the other side of the cell body, is a single, long tail called the axon. If the dendrites are the ears, the axon is the mouth. It is the talker. It takes the information gathered by the dendrites and shoots it away to the next cell. These axons can be incredibly long. There is a single axon that runs from the base of your spine all the way down to your big toe. Think of that, a single microscopic cell stretching 3 feet in length. Now, how does this tree actually work? How does a thought travel? It happens through a process called the action potential. The neuron is an electrical battery. When it is resting, it is charged. It keeps a high concentration of sodium ions outside its walls and potassium ions inside. It is waiting, tense, like a drawn bowstring. When a strong enough signal hits the dendrites, the gates open. Sodium rushes in. This sudden shift in chemistry creates an electrical spark. This spark does not just sit there. It travels. It races down the length of the axon like a flame traveling down a fuse. It is a wave of electricity. But if the axon were bare, the signal would be slow. It would leak out. To solve this, the body uses a brilliant piece of engineering called myelin. Myelin is a fatty, white substance that acts exactly like the rubber insulation on the power cord of a lamp. It wraps around the axon in layers. But it does not cover the whole thing. It leaves tiny gaps exposed. This forces the electrical signal to jump or skip from gap to gap, rather than trudging along the entire length of the wire. This jumping is called saltatory conduction. It is fast. It allows the signal to travel at speeds of up to 268 miles per hour. This is why, when you stub your toe, you feel the pain almost instantly. The message has raced up your leg on a superhighway of insulated wire. But what happens when the signal reaches the end of the line? The neuron does not touch the next cell. There is a tiny, microscopic gap between them called the synapse. This is where the magic happens. This is where electricity turns into chemistry. When the electrical wave hits the end of the axon, it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. You may have heard of them: dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline. These chemicals drift across the gap, like a boat crossing a river, and land on the dendrites of the next neuron. If enough of them land, they unlock the gates of the next cell, and a new electrical wave begins. It is a relay race: spark, chemical, chemical, happening billions of times a second inside your head. This mechanism is the basis of everything you are. When you learn a new skill, like playing a chord on a guitar, you are not growing new neurons. You are growing new connections. You are strengthening the synapses, neurons that fire together, wire together. Practice is simply the act of paving these roads, making it easier for the signal to travel that specific path next time. Consider how we manipulate this system in medicine. When you go to the dentist and get a shot of Novocaine, what is happening? The drug binds to the gates on your nerve cells. It locks them shut. The pain signal is still trying to get in. The sodium wants to rush in to create the spark, but the door is barred. No spark means no signal. No signal means the brain never gets the memo that the tooth is hurting. You are physically numb because we have chemically silenced the wire. Or think about your reflexes. If you touch a hot stove, your hand jerks back before you even feel the heat. Why? Because the signal traveled from your hand to your spine and back to the muscle without waiting for the brain to process it. It is a survival shortcut. The nervous system is built to prioritize your safety above your understanding. So, we have the unit, we have the neuron, the listener, the talker, the wire. We understand how the signal jumps and how it crosses the gap. But a single wire does not make a computer. To create consciousness, to create memory, to create you, we need to bundle these billions of wires together into a central command station. We need to look at where all these roads lead. They lead to the most complex structure in the known universe, the human brain. So, visualize those sparks. Tiny, silent flashes of light racing through the darkness of your body, carrying the orders that keep your heart beating and your lungs breathing while you sleep. The network is active. The network is safe. When we meet next, we will enter the fortress. We will study the central nervous system. For now, let your own neurons quiet down. Let the signals slow. Rest. Lesson 9. The central nervous system. Welcome back to our shared space of quiet contemplation. Let the world outside fade away. You are safe here. In our last session, we spent our time looking at the wires. We studied the neuron, that microscopic messenger capable of carrying a spark of electricity at incredible speeds. We learned how the signal jumps, how it crosses the synapse, and how it translates thought into chemistry. But 1 billion wires, no matter how fast, are useless without something to connect them. They need a destination. They need a processor. Tonight, we travel to the very seat of your existence. We are going to explore the central nervous system, or the CNS. This system consists of just 2 parts, the brain and the spinal cord. It is the command center, the archive of your memories, the generator of your dreams, and the home of your personality. It is where you reside. So, let us enter the fortress of the skull and examine the machinery of the mind. To understand the central nervous system, we must visualize it as a mushroom. It has a stalk that rises up from the spine and a large, wrinkled cap that sits on top. The cap is the cerebrum. This is the largest part of the brain, the part you likely picture when you think of a brain. It is divided into 2 massive halves, the left and right hemispheres. The surface of the cerebrum is not smooth. It is folded into hills and valleys. These folds, or gyri, act to increase the surface area, allowing more neurons to be packed into the tight confines of the skull. The outer layer of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex. Cortex means bark, like the bark of a tree. This thin, grey layer is where the magic of consciousness happens. It is divided into lobes, each with a specific job. The frontal lobe, right behind your forehead, is the CEO. It handles planning, judgment, and impulse control. The parietal lobe, on the top, processes touch and navigation. The occipital lobe, at the back, handles vision, and the temporal lobe, near your ears, manages hearing and memory. Tucked underneath the back of the cerebrum, looking like a separate, smaller brain attached to the base, is the cerebellum. The word literally means little brain. If the cerebrum is the general issuing orders, the cerebellum is the drill sergeant, ensuring they are carried out perfectly. It controls balance, coordination, and fine motor skills. When you reach out to pick up a glass and your hand stops at exactly the right spot, that is the cerebellum calculating the distance and speed in real time. Supporting all of this is the stalk, known as the brain stem. This is the oldest, most primitive part of the brain. It connects the brain to the spinal cord. It handles the business of survival. You do not have to think about breathing. You do not have to think about digesting food or maintaining your blood pressure. The brain stem, specifically the medulla oblongata, handles these autonomic functions. It is the autopilot that keeps the machine flying while the pilot sleeps. Deeper dive, context. Descending from the brainstem, exiting the skull through a large hole called the foramen magnum, is the spinal cord. It is a glistening white rope, about the width of your thumb, running down the center of your back. The spinal cord is the superhighway. It is a two-way street. Ascending tracts carry sensory information up to the brain. The stove is hot, the fur is soft. Descending tracts carry motor commands. Down to the body. Pull the hand away. Pet the dog. Because this system is so vital because it is you, the body protects it with extreme paranoia. It does not just rely on bone. It wraps the CNS in 3 layers of connective tissue called the meninges. Imagine these layers as clothing. The outermost layer is the dura mater, or tough mother. It is a leathery, strong membrane attached to the skull. Beneath that is the arachnoid mater, named for its spiderweb-like appearance. And hugging the brain tightly, dipping into every fold and crevice, is the delicate pia mater, or gentle mother. But there is one more layer of protection. The brain and spinal cord do not sit against the hard bone. They float. They are suspended in a clear, nourishing liquid called cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. This fluid acts as a shock absorber. When you jog or nod your head, your brain does not rattle against your skull. It gently bobs in this fluid cushion. It also acts as a delivery system, bringing nutrients to the neurons and washing away waste products while you sleep. We must also distinguish between the colors of the brain. You will often hear of gray matter and white matter. The difference is simple but profound. Gray matter consists of the cell bodies, the actual thinking centers, the decision makers. White matter consists of the axons, the wires connecting those centers. It is white because of the myelin insulation we discussed in the last lesson. So, when you look at a cross-section of the spinal cord, the gray matter is on the inside, processing reflexes, while the white matter is on the outside, acting as the cables running up and down the spine. Consider the concept of lateralization. We mentioned the 2 hemispheres of the cerebrum. While they look identical, they have different personalities. In most people, the left hemisphere is the accountant. It handles logic, mathematics, language, and order. The right hemisphere is the artist. It handles spatial awareness, facial recognition, music, and intuition. But here is the twist. The brain is cross-wired. The left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and vice versa. When you move your right hand to pull up the blanket, it is the left frontal lobe that issued the command. This is why a stroke on one side of the brain affects the opposite side of the body. Think also about the brainstem's resilience. A person can suffer damage to the thinking cerebrum and lose their personality or memory, yet still survive because the brainstem continues to drive the heart and lungs. Conversely, a tiny injury to the brainstem is often fatal because it knocks out the autopilot. It is a hierarchy of survival. This system is also a chemical factory. Deep inside the brain, in cavities called ventricles, the cerebrospinal fluid is constantly being produced and circulated. It is a closed loop, a private ocean that the brain bathes in, completely separated from the blood by the blood-brain barrier. This barrier is a security checkpoint that prevents toxins and bacteria in your blood from entering the sanctuary of the CNS. So, here we have the fortress. The skull and spine acting as the castle walls, the meninges acting as the inner armor, the fluid acting as the moat, and inside, the king and queen, the brain and the spinal cord sit on their throne, issuing decrees that govern the kingdom. But a king cannot rule a kingdom if his messengers cannot leave the castle. The orders are generated here, in the center, but they must be delivered to the farthest reaches of the empire, to the fingertips, to the toes, to the stomach, and to the heart. We need a system of roads that branch out from this center. We need to leave the central nervous system and explore the peripheral nervous system. So, visualize that white rope of the spinal cord glowing with light, ready to send its branches out into the darkness of the limbs. Rest your mind in the safety of the command center. Everything is under control. The autopilot is working. When we meet next, we will follow the nerves as they travel out into the body. We will learn how you feel the world. Lesson 10. The Peripheral Nervous System and Reflexes. Welcome back. It is a pleasure to have you return to our quiet study. Take a moment to settle your body, finding that perfect position where your muscles can release their hold. In our last session, we toured the fortress. We explored the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord sitting safely behind their walls of bone and membranes. We saw the command center, where decisions are made and dreams are woven. But a command center is useless if it is cut off from the world. A king locked in a tower cannot rule his kingdom if he has no messengers. Tonight, we are going to study the roads and the riders that connect the brain to the rest of the body. We are going to explore the peripheral nervous system. This is the vast network of nerves that threads through every inch of you, carrying orders to your muscles and bringing news from your skin back to the brain. It is the system of action and reaction. So, let us trace these pathways from the center out to the very edges of your being. The peripheral nervous system, or PNS, is everything outside of the brain and spinal cord. If the central nervous system is the computer, the PNS is the collection of cables connecting it to the mouse, the keyboard, the printer, and the screen. These cables are what we call nerves. A nerve is not a single cell. It is a bundle of thousands of axons wrapped together in connective tissue, like telephone wires packed inside a rubber cable. We have two main sets. First, there are the 12 pairs of cranial nerves that shoot directly out of the brain to handle the head and neck, controlling your eyes, your tongue, and your sense of smell. Second, there are the 31 pairs of spinal nerves that branch out from the spinal cord, slipping between the vertebrae to reach your arms, legs, and torso. The PNS has two main jobs, and traffic flows in two directions. We have the sensory division, or the input. These nerves are the reporters. They detect changes in the world, temperature, pressure, light, pain, and send that data inward to the brain. Then, we have the motor division, or the output. These nerves are the commanders. They carry impulses from the brain outward to the muscles and glands, telling them to act. But the motor division is not a monolith. It is split into two distinct departments based on who is in control. First, there is the somatic nervous system. This is the system of voluntary control. It connects the brain to your skeletal muscles. When you consciously decide to scratch your nose or adjust your pillow, you are using the somatic system. It is fast, precise, and under your command. Second, and perhaps more fascinating, is the Autonomic Nervous System, or ANS. The word autonomic sounds like automatic, and that is exactly what it is. This system controls the involuntary functions of the body, the beating of your heart, the churning of your stomach, the dilation of your pupils. It operates below the level of your consciousness, managing the vital machinery of life, so you do not have to. The autonomic nervous system is a world of balance. It is a scale with two sides, constantly tipping back and forth. These two sides are the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. They generally serve the same organs, but they cause opposite effects. They are the accelerator and the brake. The sympathetic division is the fight or flight system. Imagine you are walking in the woods and you hear a twig snap behind you. Instantly, your body prepares for emergency. The sympathetic nerves fire. Your heart rate accelerates to pump more blood. Your airways dilate to let in more oxygen. Your digestion shuts down because digesting lunch is not a priority when you are running for your life. Your liver dumps glucose into your blood for instant energy. You are primed for action. This system is designed for stress, excitement, and survival. On the other side, we have the parasympathetic division. This is the rest and digest system. It is the system of peace. When the danger passes, or when you lie down in a safe bed at night, this system takes over. It slows the heart rate. It constricts the pupils. It encourages the stomach and intestines to get back to work, processing nutrients and rebuilding the body's reserves. It conserves energy. It is the biological equivalent of plugging your phone into the charger. Right now, as you listen to my voice, your parasympathetic system should be in control. It is gently applying the brake to your day. It is signaling to every cell that the war is over, the hunt is done, and it is time to recover. But the PNS has one more trick up its sleeve, a mechanism designed for pure speed. We call it a reflex. A reflex is a rapid, predictable, and involuntary response to a stimulus. It is the body's way of protecting you without waiting for your permission. Imagine you accidentally touch a hot stove. If your body waited for the pain signal to travel up your arm, reach the brain, be processed by your conscious mind, "Oh, that is hot," and then have a command sent back down to move your hand, you would be badly burned. The brain is amazing, but sometimes it is too slow. So, the body uses a shortcut called the reflex arc. Here is what happens. The heat receptor in your finger detects the danger. It sends a signal along a sensory neuron to the spinal cord, but instead of sending that signal all the way up to the brain, the spinal cord makes an executive decision right there. It immediately fires a motor neuron to your arm muscle. Your hand jerks back. You pull away before your brain even realizes you were in pain. The sensation of ouch actually arrives a split second after your hand has already moved. The spinal cord saved you while the brain was still catching up. This network is relevant to every second of your existence. It explains the gut feeling you sometimes get. We often call the nervous system of the digestive tract the second brain because it is so complex and interconnected with your emotional state via the autonomic nerves. When you are nervous, the sympathetic system slows digestion, giving you butterflies. When you are relaxed, the parasympathetic system resumes activity, leading to that comfortable, heavy feeling after a good meal. It also explains why stress is so damaging over time. If you live in a constant state of high alert work deadlines, traffic, anxiety, your sympathetic system never shuts off. You are driving the car with the accelerator floored. Your heart never rests. Your digestion is constantly suppressed, and your body never gets the chance to enter that deep, restorative, parasympathetic state. That is why what we are doing right now is so important. By consciously relaxing, by slowing your breath, you are sending a manual signal to your brain to engage the parasympathetic division. You are telling your body that you are safe. So, we have the command center and we have the wires. We know how the brain sends orders out to the muscles, and we know how it balances the energy of the body between action and rest. But there is a missing piece. The brain can only react to the world if it knows what is happening in the world. It needs windows. It needs microphones. It needs sensors that can translate the physics of the universe, light, sound, chemicals, and gravity into the electrical language of the neurons. We call these the special senses. So, let your own parasympathetic system do its work. Feel your heart slowing down. Feel your breathing becoming rhythmic and deep. The wires are quiet. The messages are soft. When we meet next, we will open the windows. We will study how you see, hear, taste, and smell. For now, drift in the safety of the pause. The body is at rest. Lesson 11. The special senses. Welcome back to our sanctuary. Let the stillness of the room wrap around you like a heavy, warm blanket. In our previous sessions, we have built the body from the ground up. We have constructed the skeleton, powered it with muscles, and wired it with nerves. We have established a central nervous system to make decisions and a peripheral nervous system to carry them out. But a brain locked in a dark, silent skull is isolated. To navigate the universe, to appreciate its beauty, and to survive its dangers, the brain needs windows. It needs to perceive. Tonight, we are going to study the special senses. These are the sophisticated instruments, the cameras, the microphones, and the chemical sensors that allow you to experience reality. We often take sight, sound, smell, taste, and balance for granted, but they are miracles of biological engineering. They take the raw physics of the universe, a photon of light, a vibration in the air, a floating molecule, and translate them into the electrical language of the brain. So, close your eyes and let us turn our attention to how you sense the world. We begin with the dominant sense for most humans: vision. The eye is often compared to a camera, but it is far more elegant than any machine. It is a sphere, roughly an inch in diameter, protected by the bony orbit of the skull and cushioned by fat. Light enters the eye through the cornea. This is the clear, curved window at the very front. It acts as the first lens, bending the light rays as they pass through. The light then travels through the pupil, which is simply a hole in the center of the colored part of your eye, the iris. The iris is actually a ring of smooth muscle. It acts like the aperture of a camera. In bright light, it constricts to protect the interior. In dim light, it dilates to let in every available photon. Behind the pupil sits the lens. This is a flexible, crystal-clear disc. Its job is to fine-tune the focus. Tiny muscles pull on the lens to change its shape, allowing you to shift your gaze instantly from a book in your lap to a star in the sky. Finally, the light strikes the back wall of the eye, the retina. This is the film of the camera. It is delicate, like wet tissue paper, and it is packed with millions of photoreceptor cells. We have two types. The rods are responsible for black and white vision. They are incredibly sensitive and allow you to see in the moonlight. The cones are responsible for color and high-detail vision. They thrive in bright light. When light hits these cells, it triggers a chemical reaction that creates an electrical spark. This spark travels down the optic nerve to the back of your brain, where your mind constructs the image you see. Now, let us shift our focus to hearing. The ear is a machine designed to capture vibration. It has three distinct parts. The outer ear is the part you can see, the funnel that catches sound waves. These waves travel down the ear canal and strike the tympanic membrane, or eardrum. The eardrum vibrates, transmitting the energy into the middle ear. Here, in a tiny air-filled cavity, sit the three smallest bones in the human body: the malleus, hammer, incus, anvil, and stapes, stirrup. These tiny bones form a bridge. They amplify the vibration of the eardrum and pass it to the inner ear. The inner ear is a labyrinth of bone buried deep in the skull. The part responsible for hearing is the cochlea, which looks exactly like a snail shell. Inside the cochlea is fluid. When the stirrup bone pushes against the cochlea, it creates ripples in this fluid. These ripples travel through the snail shell and brush against microscopic hairs lining the walls. When these hairs bend, they trigger a nerve signal. Your brain interprets the bending of these tiny hairs as the sound of a voice or a melody. But the ear has a second, secret function. It is also the organ of equilibrium, or balance. Next to the cochlea are the semicircular canals. These are three loops of fluid-filled tubes, oriented in the three dimensions of space: up, down, left, right, and forward, backward. When you turn your head, the fluid inside these tubes sloshes around, bending a different set of hair cells. This tells your brain exactly how you are moving through space. It is your internal gyroscope. If you feel dizzy, it is often because this fluid is still swirling, even though you have stopped moving. Now, consider the chemical senses, taste and smell. These are the most primal senses, directly linked to our survival and emotion. Olfaction, or smell, is unique. It is the only sense where the receptor cells are directly exposed to the outside world. High inside your nose is a patch of tissue called the olfactory epithelium. When you breathe in, airborne molecules dissolve in the mucus there and bind to receptors. These receptors send signals directly to the brain. But here is the fascinating part. The olfactory nerve connects directly to the limbic system, the brain's emotional center. This is why a specific smell like fresh cookies or rain on asphalt can instantly trigger a vivid, emotional memory before you even realize what you are smelling. Gustation, or taste, is simpler. Your tongue is covered in bumps called papillae, and tucked inside the grooves of these bumps are the taste buds. We only have receptors for 5 basic tastes: sweet, sour, acid, salty electrolytes, bitter, poison, and umami, savory protein. Everything else you think you taste, like the difference between a strawberry and a cherry, is actually flavor, which is a combination of taste and smell working together. These senses are your interface with reality. Think about how they protect you. Bitter taste prevents you from eating toxins. Pain receptors in your skin prevent you from burning yourself. The vestibule in your ear keeps you upright when you stumble, but they are also the source of your joy. The beauty of a sunset is just photons hitting your retina. The comfort of a favorite song is just air pushing your eardrum. Your body is constantly translating the harsh, cold physics of the universe into a rich, colorful, and emotional internal experience. Even now, as you rest, your senses are drifting into a standby mode. Your eyes are closed, cutting off the visual data. The room is quiet, calming the fluid in your cochlea. You are horizontal, so your equilibrium sensors are sending a steady signal of stability. You are reducing the input. You are turning down the volume of the world so that the mind can rest. We have explored the nerves that carry the signals. We have explored the organs that catch the signals. But nerves are fast. They are lightning strikes, quick, sharp, and immediate. Sometimes, the body needs a different kind of message. Sometimes, it needs a message that lasts. It needs a mood. It needs a season of growth. It needs a rhythm that plays out over hours, days, or even years. For that, we cannot use electricity. We must use chemistry. We must use a system that pours its messages directly into the blood, like a letter dropped in a river. We are ready to study the endocrine system. So, let your senses dull. Let the image of the eye and the ear fade into the darkness behind your lids. You do not need to see or hear anything right now. You only need to be. When we meet next, we will study the hormones that guide your life. Lesson 12. The Endocrine System. Welcome back. Come into the stillness. Let your breathing settle into a slow, steady rhythm, like the tide coming in and going out. In our previous sessions, we have been studying the body's electrical systems. We looked at the nerves, which act like lightning fast, sharp, and immediate. When a nerve fires, the effect is instantaneous, but it is also fleeting. It happens, and then it is gone. But life is not always a sprint. Sometimes, the body needs to send a message that lasts. It needs to manage processes that take time: growing a bone, digesting a meal, waking up in the morning, or falling asleep at night. For these long-term projects, electricity is too frantic. We need a different kind of communication. We need chemistry. Tonight, we study the endocrine system. This is the body's second great control system. Instead of wires, it uses the blood. Instead of sparks, it uses chemical messengers called hormones. It is a system of subtle influence, guiding the rhythm of your life from the background. So, let us explore these silent currents that flow within you. The endocrine system is a collection of glands scattered throughout the body. Unlike the sweat glands we discussed earlier, which pour their secretions onto the skin through a tube, endocrine glands are ductless. They have no tubes. Instead, they release their products directly into the bloodstream. They pour their chemicals into the river of life and let the current carry them away. These chemicals are called hormones. The word comes from the Greek meaning to arouse or to set in motion. You can think of a hormone like a message in a bottle. The gland throws millions of these bottles into the bloodstream. They travel everywhere to your toes, your brain, your heart. But here is the miracle. They do not affect every cell they touch. A hormone works on a lock and key principle. Each hormone has a specific shape. As it floats past a cell, it tries to fit into a receptor on the cell's surface. If the cell has the matching lock, the receptor, the hormone binds to it and delivers its message. If the cell does not have the lock, the hormone floats right on by, ignoring it. This ensures that a hormone like adrenaline makes your heart beat faster, but does not make your hair grow. The message is only received by those listening for it. Let us tour the major outposts of this system. It begins in the brain, with the partnership between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. We often call the pituitary the master gland. It is tiny, the size of a pea, hanging from the base of the brain. But despite its size, it rules the others. It releases hormones that travel to the thyroid, the adrenals, and the reproductive organs, telling them what to do. It is the conductor of the orchestra. Moving down to the throat, wrapped around the windpipe like a butterfly, is the thyroid gland. This acts as the body's thermostat. It produces thyroid hormone, which controls your metabolism, how fast your body burns fuel. If your thyroid is overactive, you feel hot and jittery. If it is underactive, you feel cold and sluggish. It sets the tempo for every cell in your body. Perched on top of your kidneys, like little hats, are the adrenal glands. These are the emergency responders. They produce adrenaline, epinephrine, and cortisol. When you are stressed, they flood the system with energy, preparing you to fight or flee. They manage your ability to cope with the demands of the world. And deep in the abdomen lies the pancreas. This is a dual-purpose organ. We will see it later in digestion, but hormonally, it is responsible for fuel management. It produces insulin and glucagon. These two hormones are constantly dancing with each other to keep your blood sugar perfectly stable. Insulin lowers sugar when it is too high, and glucagon raises it when it is too low. The beauty of the endocrine system lies in its self-regulation. It runs almost entirely on negative feedback loops, much like the thermostat we discussed in our very first lesson. Consider the relationship between the pituitary and the thyroid. When the pituitary senses that metabolism is slowing down, It releases a signal, TSH, telling the thyroid to work harder. The thyroid obeys and releases more hormone. As the levels of thyroid hormone rise in the blood, the pituitary detects this increase. Satisfied, it stops sending the signal. It turns itself off. It is a perfect, closed loop of communication that keeps your levels steady without you ever having to think about it. We must also mention a tiny, pinecone-shaped gland deep in the center of the brain called the pineal gland. This gland is sensitive to light. When the sun goes down and darkness falls, the pineal gland begins to secrete melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone of darkness. It is the chemical signal that tells the rest of the body, it is night, time to rest. It lowers your body temperature, makes your eyelids heavy, and prepares the brain for the cycles of sleep. In a very real sense, the drowsy feeling you might be experiencing right now is the result of the pineal gland doing its work, flooding your system with this gentle, chemical lullaby. This system explains so much of the human experience. It explains the hangry feeling you get when you miss a meal, that is your adrenal glands releasing stress hormones because your blood sugar dropped. It explains the sudden growth spurt of a teenager, that is the work of growth hormone from the pituitary. It explains the sudden strength you have during a crisis. Hormones are powerful. They can alter your mood, your energy, and even your personality. They are the chemical background music of your life. When the music is calm and balanced, you feel well. When the music is discordant, you feel ill. The endocrine system connects the physical to the emotional. We often think of emotions as purely mental, but they are deeply physical events driven by these chemicals. Fear is cortisol. Bonding is oxytocin. Sleep is melatonin. You are a chemistry set in motion. So, we have established that these messengers, these hormones, are thrown into the bloodstream. They rely entirely on the river to carry them. If the river stops, the message never arrives. If the river is clogged, the system fails. The blood is the highway of the body. It carries the hormones, yes, but it also carries the oxygen, the nutrients, the waste, and the heat. It is the fluid that binds the entire body together into a single unit. We have studied the glands. Now, we must study the river itself. So, let the idea of the hormones settle. Visualize those tiny chemical keys finding their locks, turning gently, and allowing your cells to relax. The adrenaline is washing away. The melatonin is rising. You are safe. When we meet next, we will wade into the stream. We will study the blood. Lesson 13. The blood. Welcome back. Come in and let the door close on the world outside. Here, there is only the quiet hum of our shared study. In our last session, we spoke of the endocrine system. We visualized hormones as messages in bottles, thrown into a vast, flowing river to be carried to distant shores. Tonight, we must turn our attention to the river itself. We are going to study blood. It is a substance so vital that it has become a symbol for life, for family, and for sacrifice in almost every culture on Earth. But biologically, it is a marvel of engineering. It is the only fluid tissue in the human body. It is the highway that connects the isolated city of the brain to the distant outpost of the toe. It brings the fuel, it removes the trash, and it patrols the borders. So, settle in, let your heart rate slow, and let us float down this red stream that sustains you. To understand blood, we must first realize that it is not just a red liquid, it is a suspension. If you were to take a drop of your blood and spin it in a centrifuge, it would separate into 3 distinct layers. The top layer, making up about 55% of the total, is a pale, straw-colored fluid called plasma. This is the matrix. It is mostly water, about 90%, but it is thick with dissolved treasures. It carries the nutrients you absorbed from your last meal. The glucose, the amino acids, and the vitamins. It carries the waste products destined for the kidneys. And it carries a fleet of invisible proteins, like albumin, which keeps the water from leaking out of your blood vessels, and antibodies, which are proteins waiting to tag an invader. Plasma is the liquid medium that makes movement possible. Floating within this plasma are the formed elements. These are the solid parts of blood. The bottom layer, the heavy red sediment that makes up roughly 45% of the volume, consists of erythrocytes, or red blood cells. These are the workers. They are the most abundant cells in the body by far. Their job is singular and vital: to carry oxygen. Sitting between the plasma and the red layer is a tiny, thin, white line, often called the buffy coat. This contains the remaining two elements. First, the leukocytes, or white blood cells. These are the warriors. They are the mobile army of the body's immune system, constantly hunting for bacteria, viruses, and tumor cells. Second, the platelets, or thrombocytes. These are not even whole cells, but shattered fragments of larger cells. They are the emergency repair kit, waiting to plug any leak in the vessel walls. Let us focus on the star of the show, the red blood cell. It is a masterpiece of industrial design. If you looked at one under a microscope, it would look like a tiny donut without the hole punched all the way through a biconcave disc. This shape is crucial. It gives the cell a massive surface area relative to its volume, allowing oxygen to rush in and out quickly. It also makes the cell flexible, allowing it to bend and squeeze through capillaries narrower than itself. But the most poetic aspect of the red blood cell is its sacrifice. When a red blood cell is born in the marrow of your bones, it has a nucleus, just like any other cell. But as it matures and prepares to enter the bloodstream, it does something incredible. It ejects its own nucleus. It throws away its command center and its ability to reproduce. Why? To make more room. By emptying itself of organelles, the cell becomes a simple sac filled with a protein called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a complex molecule built around an atom of iron. Iron is strong. Iron is magnetic. And iron has a perfect affinity for oxygen. When oxygen binds to the iron in hemoglobin, the blood turns a bright, scarlet red. When the oxygen is released to your tissues, the blood turns a deep, dark red. This is why your veins look blue through your skin, not because the blood is blue, but because the dark red blood interacting with the physics of light through your skin creates that hue. Because the red blood cell has stripped itself of its nucleus to carry this cargo, it cannot repair itself. It lives a rough life, bumping against artery walls and squeezing through capillaries for about 120 days. After 4 months of ceaseless travel, the cell becomes old and fragile. It is then caught by the spleen, the graveyard of the red blood cell, and broken down. But the body is frugal. It saves the iron. It recycles the precious metal to build the next generation of cells, completing the circle of life. We must also respect the platelets. These tiny fragments are constantly on patrol. When a blood vessel tears perhaps from a small cut, the collagen fibers of the vessel wall are exposed. The platelets sense this rough texture and instantly change. They become sticky and spiky. They cling to the tear and to each other, forming a temporary plug. They then release chemical signals that turn the liquid plasma proteins into solid threads called fibrin. This fibrin acts like a net, trapping more cells and sealing the hole completely. This process, called homeostasis, is the difference between a minor scrape and a fatal event. It is a self-sealing system that activates in seconds. Think about the profound connection this creates. Every breath you take brings oxygen into your lungs. But that oxygen is useless there. It must be loaded onto a red blood cell. That cell then travels to your heart, is pumped to your shoulder, travels down your arm, and delivers that oxygen to a muscle cell in your finger so you can scratch and itch. The entire body is a trade network. The stomach digests for the brain, the kidney filters for the heart, the lungs breathe for the toes, and the blood is the courier that makes this cooperation possible. It is also a thermal regulator. Blood is warm. When you are hot, your body diverts blood to the skin, allowing the heat to radiate out into the air. This is why you flush red after exercise. When you are cold, the body pulls the blood deep into the core to keep your vital organs warm. This is why your fingers turn pale and cold in the winter. It is a liquid climate control system. So, we have this incredible fluid, a mix of water, protein, metal, and cells. It is heavy, it is viscous, and it is sticky. It cannot move on its own. If left to itself, gravity would pull it all down to your feet, and you would faint. To defy gravity, to push this thick red river through thousands of miles of narrow vessels, we need pressure. We need a force. We need an engine that can run for 80 years without ever turning off for maintenance. We need the heart. So, visualize the blood flowing gently through your veins. A warm, nourishing stream carrying everything you need to every part of you. It is flowing smoothly. It is quiet. When we meet next, we will find the source of the flow. We will study the pump. For now, rest in the stream. Lesson 14. The Cardiovascular System, the heart. Welcome back to our quiet room. Let the stillness settle around you. In our last session, we waded into the river of life. We studied the blood, that warm, red fluid carrying the oxygen, the nutrients, and the history of your body to every distant cell. We established that the blood is heavy. It is a viscous, sticky suspension that, if left to the laws of gravity, would simply pool in the lowest parts of your body. To keep this river moving, to push it against gravity, up to the brain and out to the fingertips, we need force. We need pressure. We need an engine that is reliable, powerful, and tireless. Tonight, we are going to study the center of the circulatory universe. We are going to hold the human heart in our minds. It is roughly the size of your fist, weighing less than a pound, yet it is the strongest muscle you possess. It is the drummer that sets the rhythm of your entire life. So, place a hand over your chest, feel that steady thump, and let us explore the engine within. To understand the heart, we must first place it correctly. It sits in the center of your chest, in a cavity called the mediastinum, tucked safely between the lungs. It rests on the diaphragm like a king on a throne. But it is not naked. The heart is enclosed in a double-walled sac called the pericardium. Imagine a loose, tough bag that protects the heart and anchors it to the surrounding structures. Between the heart and this bag is a thin film of fluid, allowing the heart to beat without friction. It beats in a frictionless, watery cradle. The heart wall itself is made of 3 layers. The outer skin is the epicardium. The inner lining, smooth as glass to prevent clotting, is the endocardium. But the bulk of the heart is the middle layer, the myocardium. This is the muscle. This is the flesh that contracts billions of times over a lifetime. It is arranged in spiral bundles. So when it contracts, it does not just squeeze. It wrings the heart out like a wet towel, ensuring maximum efficiency. Functionally, the heart is a double pump. It is 2 pumps sitting side by side, separated by a solid wall called the septum. The right side is the pulmonary pump. It receives the tired, oxygen-poor blood from the body and sends it only one place, to the lungs. It is a short trip just next door. The left side is the systemic pump. It receives the fresh, oxygen-rich blood from the lungs and drives it out to the entire body. This is a much harder job. Consequently, the muscle of the left ventricle is far thicker and stronger than the right. Let us trace the path of a single drop of blood. It is a journey through 4 rooms, 4 chambers. The blood arrives from the body, dark and depleted, entering the right atrium. Think of the atrium as a waiting room or an entry hall. It is small and thin-walled. Its job is simply to receive. From there, the blood flows down through a trapdoor into the right ventricle. The ventricles are the actual pumps. When the right ventricle contracts, it pushes the blood out to the lungs to catch a breath of fresh air. The blood returns, bright red and oxygenated, entering the left atrium. It passes down through another trapdoor into the massive left ventricle. This is the powerhouse. When this chamber contracts, it generates the immense pressure needed to shoot the blood up into the aorta and all the way down to your toes. We mentioned trapdoors. These are the valves. The heart has 4 of them, and they enforce a strict rule. Traffic moves in one direction only. There are no U-turns in the cardiovascular system. Between the atria and the ventricles sit the atrioventricular AV valves. On the right, we have the tricuspid. On the left, we have the mitral or bicuspid valve. These valves hang open like limp curtains when the heart is relaxed, letting blood flow down. But when the massive ventricles contract, the pressure slams these curtains shut. To keep them from blowing backward into the atrium, they are tethered by tiny collagen ropes called chordae tendineae, or heartstrings. Then, guarding the exits, we have the semilunar valves, the pulmonary and the aortic. These look like 3 tiny crescent moons. They open to let blood leave the heart, but snap shut the moment gravity tries to pull the blood back in. This brings us to the sound. Everyone knows the sound of the heart. Lub-dub, lub-dub. But what is it? It is not the muscle contracting, it is the sound of the doors slamming shut. The first sound, lub, is the loud, booming closing of the AV valves when the ventricles squeeze. The second sound, dub, is the sharp, crisp snap of the semilunar valves when the heart relaxes. It is the music of mechanical closure. But what tells the heart to beat? Skeletal muscles, as we learned, wait for the brain to command them. But the heart is different. It possesses autorhythmicity. It beats on its own. High in the wall of the right atrium sits a small cluster of cells called the sinoatrial SA node. This is the pacemaker. Every 0.8 seconds or so, this node spontaneously generates an electrical spark, no brain required. This spark spreads across the atria like a ripple in a pond, causing them to contract. It then travels to a junction box called the atrioventricular AV node, where it pauses for a brief millisecond. This pause is critical. It allows the atria to finish emptying their blood into the ventricles before the main event. Then, the signal shoots down a specialized highway called the bundle of His and explodes up the walls of the ventricles via the Purkinje fibers. The result is a synchronized, powerful contraction from the bottom up, pushing blood out into the arteries. There is a beautiful paradox here. The heart is filled with blood, yet the heart muscle cannot feed off the blood inside its chambers. The walls are too thick, and the blood is moving too fast. The heart, just like any other muscle, needs its own private blood supply. This is the role of the coronary arteries. They are the very first branches off the aorta. The heart feeds itself first. These arteries wrap around the outside of the heart like a crown, hence corona. If one of these small vessels becomes blocked by cholesterol, the muscle downstream dies. This is a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. It is a plumbing problem in the engine's own fuel line. Reflect on the endurance of this organ. If your heart beats 75 times a minute, that is over 100,000 beats today. It is 35 million beats a year. By the time you are 70, your heart will have beaten 2.5 billion times. It never rests. It never stops for a holiday. Even between beats, when it is relaxing, diastole, it is merely filling up to do it all over again. It is the definition of faithfulness. So, the engine is running. The pacemaker is firing the spark. The valves are snapping shut in perfect rhythm. The pump is generating pressure, pushing that warm, red fluid out of the left ventricle and into the great vessel, the aorta. But the blood has a long way to go. It has to navigate a complex, twisting network of highways, backroads, and alleyways to reach every single cell. It needs pipes that can handle the high pressure near the heart, and pipes that are delicate enough to feed a single neuron. We must map the roads. We must look at the vessels. So, listen to your own pulse for a moment. Feel it in your neck or your wrist. That is the shockwave of the lesson we just learned. Let that rhythm lull you deeper. The engine is strong. The pump is working. You are alive. When we meet next, we will follow the blood out of the heart and into the vast network. We will study the blood vessels. For now, rest in the rhythm. Lesson 15. The Cardiovascular System, Blood Vessels. Welcome back. It is good to see you settle in. Let your breathing slow, matching the steady rhythm we established in our last session. In that lesson, we stood at the very center of the body. We watched the heart, that tireless, muscular engine, contracting and relaxing, pumping the red river of life with immense force. We felt the power of the lub-dub, the slamming of the doors that keeps the blood moving forward. But a pump is useless without pipes. The heart generates the pressure, but it is the vessels that direct the flow. Tonight, we are going to follow the blood as it leaves the safety of the heart and travels out into the vast, twisting wilderness of the body. We are going to map the highways, the back roads, and the tiny alleyways of the cardiovascular system. If you were to take all the blood vessels in your body and lay them end to end, they would stretch for 60,000 miles. That is enough to circle the earth twice. You contain a world of distance within you. So, let us trace these miles together. To navigate this map, we must understand that the blood moves in a closed loop. It is a circle, and the roads it travels on fall into 3 distinct categories, each built for a specific phase of the journey. First, we have the arteries. The rule here is simple. Arteries always carry blood away from the heart. Do not memorize them by color. Memorize them by direction. A for artery, A for away. Because they are catching the blood right after the heart squeezes, arteries are under high pressure. They are the superhighways. To handle this stress, their walls are thick, strong, and elastic. They expand when the heart beats, absorbing the shock, and recoil when the heart relaxes, keeping the blood flowing smoothly. As the arteries travel further from the heart, they branch. They split into smaller and smaller vessels, eventually becoming arterioles. These are the stopcocks of the circulation. They have muscular walls that can clamp down or open up, controlling exactly how much blood goes to a specific organ. When you are digesting dinner, the arterioles leading to your stomach open wide, while the ones leading to your legs might close slightly. They are the traffic controllers. Finally, the arterioles lead into the capillaries. This is the destination. This is where the actual work gets done. Capillaries are microscopic, so small that red blood cells have to march through them single file. Their walls are incredibly thin, often just 1 cell thick. It is here, in these tiny, fragile bridges, that the exchange happens. Oxygen hops off the red blood cell and diffuses into your tissues. Carbon dioxide hops on. Nutrients slip out to feed your cells, and waste products slip in to be carried away. If the arteries are the highways, the capillaries are the driveways where the delivery is actually made. Once the delivery is complete, the blood needs to come home. The capillaries merge to form venules, which then join to form veins. Veins carry blood toward the heart. By now, the blood has lost its momentum. The pressure is very low. It flows like a lazy river. Because there is no high pressure to contain, the walls of veins are much thinner and floppier than arteries. If an artery is a sturdy garden hose, a vein is a soft sleeve. To truly appreciate the engineering of these vessels, we should look at their construction. With the exception of the tiny capillaries, every vessel is made of 3 layers, or tunics. The innermost layer, touching the blood, is the tunica intima. It is a smooth, slick lining of epithelial cells that minimizes friction. It must be perfectly smooth. If it were rough, the blood would clot. The middle layer is the tunica media. This is made of smooth muscle and elastic fibers. This is the layer that allows the vessel to change its size. When you are cold, this muscle contracts, vasoconstriction, to keep heat in. When you are hot, it relaxes, vasodilation, to let heat out. The outer layer is the tunica externa. It is a tough jacket of connective tissue that protects the vessel and anchors it to the surrounding muscles and organs. Now, we must address a problem of physics. The arteries have the heart pushing behind them, but the veins, they are far away from the pump. The pressure is almost zero. And to make matters worse, the veins in your legs have to push blood up against gravity to get back to the chest. How is this possible? The body uses 2 brilliant tricks. First, it uses valves. Just like the heart, your veins have tiny flaps of tissue that act as one-way gates. The blood can flow up, but if it tries to slide back down, the valve catches it. This breaks the long column of blood into manageable segments. Second, it uses the skeletal muscle pump. Veins are often buried deep inside your skeletal muscles. Every time you take a step, the muscles in your calves contract and bulge. This squeezing pushes against the vein, milking the blood upward through the valves. You literally walk your blood back to your heart. This is why standing still for too long can make you faint. Without the muscle pump, the blood pools in your feet and the brain gets starved. This system is dynamic. It is constantly adjusting. This is what we measure when we check blood pressure. When the doctor says 120/80, they are measuring the force of the blood against the artery walls. The top number, systolic pressure, is the pressure when the heart is contracting the peak of the wave. The bottom number, diastolic pressure, is the pressure when the heart is relaxing. It is important to note that the pressure never drops to 0. If it did, your blood would stop moving between beats. The elasticity of your arteries keeps the pressure up, ensuring a steady, continuous flow even when the heart is resting. Think about the phenomenon of a pulse. When you feel your wrist, you are not feeling the blood flow itself. You are feeling the shockwave of the heart's contraction traveling down the arterial wall. It is a tactile reminder of the connection between the engine and the highway. Consider also the blushing of a cheek. That is the tunica media in the arterioles of your face relaxing, allowing the capillaries to flood with warm, red blood. It is an emotional signal broadcast through a physiological mechanism. Or consider the pins and needles sensation when your foot falls asleep. That is not a nerve problem, primarily. It is often pressure compressing the blood supply, starving the nerve of oxygen until you move and restore the flow. So, the blood circulates out through the high-pressure arteries, filtering through the gossamer-thin capillaries, and drifting back through the valved veins. It is a perfect, sealed loop. But it is not perfectly sealed. Remember those capillaries? They are designed to be leaky. They have to be, to let nutrients out. But they also let a lot of water out. In fact, every day, your capillaries leak about 3 liters of fluid into the tissues that they do not pick back up. If this fluid stayed there, you would swell up like a balloon and your blood pressure would crash. The body needs a drainage system. It needs a secondary network of vessels to suck up this excess fluid, clean it, and return it to the blood. It is a shadow network, working quietly alongside the cardiovascular system. We call it the lymphatic system. So, Visualize the fluid leaking gently from the capillaries, like dew settling on the grass of your tissues. It is waiting to be collected. It is waiting to be cleaned. When we meet next, we will follow this fluid into the lymphoid stream. We will study the body's defense and drainage. For now, let the flow carry you. You are balanced. You are whole. Lesson 16. The lymphatic system and immunity. Welcome back. Come into the warmth of our study. Let the heavy door latch shut, sealing out the noise and the demands of the world outside. You are safe here. In our last session, we traveled the length of the body's highways. We mapped the arteries and veins, those mighty roads carrying the high-pressure traffic of life. We watched the blood rush out to the capillaries to deliver its cargo and then drift back to the heart. But we ended with a cliffhanger. We discovered that the system leaks. We learned that the capillaries, those tiny, fragile bridges where nutrients are exchanged, are porous. As the blood flows through them, liquid seeps out. It drips into the spaces between your cells, like dew settling on a garden. If this fluid were left there, your tissues would swell, your blood pressure would crash, and the entire balance of the body would fail. Tonight, we are going to explore the solution. We are going to shine a light on the body's shadow network. It is a system that runs quietly alongside the blood vessels, often ignored but absolutely vital. It is the lymphatic system. It is the body's drainage crew, but it is also something more. It is your security force. It is the silent army that patrols the borders of your being, distinguishing friend from foe. So, settle in and let us meet your protectors. The lymphatic system is unique because it is a one-way street. Unlike the blood, which travels in a closed loop, the lymphatic system begins at a dead end. Imagine the tissues of your body, your muscles, your skin, your liver as a sponge. This sponge is constantly being soaked by the fluid leaking from your blood capillaries. Woven through this sponge are millions of tiny, microscopic tubes called lymphatic capillaries. They are incredibly delicate, looking like the fingers of a glove reaching into the tissue. These capillaries are designed with a clever trap. The cells that make up their walls overlap loosely, forming tiny, one-way swinging doors. When the pressure of the fluid outside gets high, it pushes these doors open, and the fluid rushes in. Once inside, the pressure pushes the doors shut, so the fluid cannot escape. The moment this fluid enters the vessel, it changes its name. When it was in the blood, it was plasma. When it was between the cells, it was interstitial fluid. But now, flowing through these white channels, it is called lymph. It is a clear, watery liquid, rich in protein and cellular debris. This lymph starts a long journey home. The tiny capillaries merge into larger vessels, which merge into trunks, and finally into two large ducts in your chest. The goal is to return this stolen fluid to the blood. It is dumped back into the large veins near your neck, the subclavian veins, restoring the volume of your bloodstream. It is the ultimate recycling program. But there is a catch. Just like the veins, the lymphatic vessels have no pump. There is no lymph heart to drive the flow. So, how does the fluid move? It relies on you. It relies on the milking action of your skeletal muscles as you move your arms and legs. It relies on the pressure changes in your chest as you breathe. It relies on the rhythmic pulsing of nearby arteries knocking against the lymph vessels. This is why lying still for too long makes you feel stiff and puffy. The drainage system has slowed down because you have stopped moving. If the lymphatic system were only about drainage, it would be a simple plumbing story. But it has a second, more dramatic purpose. It is the headquarters of your immune system. As the lymph travels toward the heart, it is forced to pass through checkpoints. These are the lymph nodes. You have hundreds of them clustered in strategic areas in your neck, your armpits, and your groin. They are small, bean-shaped organs, usually less than an inch long. Think of a lymph node as a water treatment plant combined with a military base. The lymph flows in through several vessels on the outer rim. Inside, the node is a maze of connective tissue fibers. Clinging to these fibers are the soldiers of the body, macrophages and lymphocytes. As the dirty lymph trickles through the maze, the macrophages act as the janitors. They are large, hungry cells that swallow up debris, dead cells, and bacteria. They scrub the fluid clean. Meanwhile, the lymphocytes are the intelligence officers. They are scanning every particle that passes by, looking for specific markers called antigens. An antigen is simply a shape. It is a molecular name tag. Every cell in your body wears a name tag that says self. Your immune system ignores these, but a bacteria, a virus, or a splinter wears a name tag that says non-self. If a lymphocyte spots a non-self antigen in the lymph, it sounds the alarm. This is why your glands swell when you are sick. If you have a sore throat, the lymph nodes in your neck swell up. This is not a bad sign. It is a sign of a massive mobilization. The soldiers inside are multiplying rapidly to fight the infection draining from your throat. The node becomes a bustling war room, swollen with activity. The system also includes larger organs. On the left side of your abdomen, curving around your stomach, is the spleen. It is the largest lymphatic organ. While the nodes filter lymph, the spleen filters blood. It removes old, worn-out red blood cells and stores a reserve of platelets. It is a blood-cleansing reservoir. Then, deep behind your breastbone, sitting just above the heart, is the thymus. This organ is fascinating because it is most active when you are a child. It is the university for your immune cells. It is where T lymphocytes go to learn the difference between self and non-self. Once they graduate, they are deployed to the nodes, and the thymus slowly shrinks as you age, its job largely done. Consider the elegance of this dual purpose. The body takes a problem leaking fluid and turns it into a solution. By forcing this fluid to travel through a separate network before returning to the blood, the body creates a perfect opportunity to scan it for danger. It is like an airport security checkpoint. You cannot get to the gate, the heart, without passing through the metal detectors, the nodes. This system is constantly protecting you, even right now. Every breath you take, every meal you eat, introduces microscopic invaders. But you are not sick. You are safe. Why? Because the macrophages are quietly patrolling your lungs. The Peyer's patches in your intestines are scanning your food. The tonsils in your throat are guarding the entrance. There is a concept in immunology called tolerance. It is the ability of the system to recognize you and leave you alone. It is a biological form of self-love. The system is aggressive against the world, but gentle with the self. It knows exactly where the boundary lies. So, we have a clean, drained, and defended body. The fluids are balanced. The borders are secure. The soldiers are at their posts, fed by the nutrients delivered by the blood. But fighting battles requires immense energy. Scrubbing the lymph requires fuel. Building new immune cells requires raw materials. And the most critical ingredient for generating that energy is one we take from the invisible ocean of air around us. To keep the fires of metabolism burning, to keep the macrophages moving and the heart pumping, we need oxygen, and we need to get rid of the smoke, the carbon dioxide. We need to breathe. So, take a deep breath now. Feel the cool air entering your nose. That is the fuel for your defense. That is the spark for your life. When we meet next, we will follow that air down into the delicate wings of the lungs. We will study the respiratory system. For now, rest in the knowledge that you are watched over. The guards are at the gate. Lesson 17. The Respiratory System. Welcome back. take a moment to arrive fully in this space. I want you to do something simple for me. I want you to take a deep, slow breath in, hold it for a heartbeat, and then let it go in a long, soft sigh. Feel that? That simple act is the most fundamental rhythm of your life. Before you could eat, before you could speak, before you could even think, you took a breath. And until the very end, this rhythm will accompany you, a faithful tide rising and falling in your chest. In our last session, we spoke of the body's defenses. We spoke of armies and battles and the energy required to keep you safe. But energy is not free. To burn fuel, you need a fire. And to keep a fire burning, you need a constant supply of one invisible vital ingredient, oxygen. Tonight, we are going to study the system that captures this ingredient from the thin air around us. We are going to explore the respiratory system. It is the interface between the wet, warm world of your blood and the dry, vast ocean of the atmosphere. So, breathe easy and let us follow the air as it travels into the deepest wings of your lungs. The journey of a breath begins at the nose. You might think the nose is just a passage, but it is actually a sophisticated climate control system. As cool, dry air enters your nostrils, it swirls around bony shelves called nasal conchae. These shelves increase the surface area, ensuring that the air touches the warm, moist lining of your nose. By the time the air reaches your throat, it has been warmed to body temperature and saturated with humidity. It has also been filtered. Tiny hairs and sticky mucus trap dust and pollen, ensuring that only clean air enters the delicate machinery below. From the nose, the air travels down into the pharynx, or throat. This is a shared hallway. Both food and air pass through here. But at the bottom of the throat, there is a crucial fork in the road. One path leads to the stomach, and the other leads to the lungs. To prevent accidents, the body uses a tiny flap of tissue called the epiglottis. Think of it as a traffic cop. When you swallow, the epiglottis folds down to cover the airway, directing food to the stomach. When you breathe, it opens up, allowing air to pass freely. The air then enters the larynx, or voice box. This is the gateway to the lower respiratory tract. It is made of rigid cartilage. You can feel the largest piece, the Adam's apple, in your neck. Inside, two folds of tissue, the vocal cords vibrate to produce the sounds of speech. But their primary job is protection, acting as a final seal to keep liquids out of the lungs. Below the larynx lies the trachea, or windpipe. This is a sturdy tube, about 4 inches long. It is reinforced with C-shaped rings of cartilage. These rings are vital. They keep the trachea held open at all times, much like the reinforced hose of a vacuum cleaner. If the trachea were a soft tube, it would collapse shut every time you inhaled, suffocating you. The C shape allows the esophagus behind it to expand when you swallow a large bite of food, sharing the space efficiently. At its base, the trachea splits into 2 large branches, the bronchi. One goes right, one goes left. These bronchi enter the lungs and immediately begin to divide. They split into smaller secondary bronchi, then tertiary bronchi, and so on, dividing roughly 23 times. This structure is often called the respiratory tree. And the analogy is perfect. The trachea is the trunk, the bronchi are the branches, and as we move outward, the tubes get smaller and smaller, turning into tiny twigs called bronchioles. These bronchioles are no longer held open by cartilage, they are wrapped in smooth muscle. This allows them to constrict or dilate, regulating airflow much like the arterioles regulate blood flow. Finally, at the very end of the tiniest bronchioles, we reach the leaves of the tree. We reach the destination, the alveoli. You have roughly 300 million alveoli in your lungs. If you are visualizing them, do not picture a balloon. Picture a bunch of grapes. They are clusters of microscopic, thin-walled sacs. They are incredibly delicate. Their walls are made of a single layer of epithelial cells. This is the thinnest barrier in the human body. It is here, and only here, that the magic happens. The alveoli are covered in a cobweb of pulmonary capillaries. The wall of the air sac and the wall of the blood vessel are fused together to form the respiratory membrane. This membrane is thinner than a sheet of tissue paper. On one side of the paper is air, rich in oxygen. On the other side is dark, tired blood, rich in carbon dioxide. Nature seeks balance, so a process called diffusion takes over. The gases simply want to move from where there is a lot of them to where there is little. Oxygen jumps across the membrane into the blood, eager to bind to the hemoglobin we studied earlier. Simultaneously, carbon dioxide jumps out of the blood and into the air sac, ready to be exhaled. This exchange happens effortlessly, millions of times a minute. It is silent, it is passive, it is the chemistry of life resolving itself. But there is a mechanical marvel here too. Why do the lungs fill with air? They have no muscles of their own. They are just elastic bags. The power comes from the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a large, dome-shaped sheet of muscle that separates your chest from your abdomen. When you are relaxed, it curves upward like a parachute. When you inhale, the diaphragm contracts and flattens out, moving downward. At the same time, the muscles between your ribs pull your ribcage up and out. This creates a larger space in your chest cavity. And here is where physics comes in, Boyle's law. When you increase the volume of a container, the pressure inside drops. By expanding your chest, you create a partial vacuum inside your lungs. The air outside, which is under higher pressure, rushes in to fill that vacuum. You do not suck air in. The universe pushes it into you. Exhalation is even simpler. It is usually passive. You just stop contracting. The diaphragm relaxes and pops back up to its dome shape. The elastic tissue of the lungs recoils like a released rubber band. The space gets smaller, the pressure rises, and the air flows out. It is the path of least resistance. This system is the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind. Think about it. You cannot stop your heart. You cannot stop your digestion. But you can hold your breath. You can choose to breathe fast or slow. The respiratory system is the only vital function that is under both voluntary and involuntary control. This is why breathing is so central to meditation and relaxation. By consciously slowing your breath, you send a manual signal to the brainstem, specifically the medulla and pons, that you are safe. You hack your own nervous system to induce calm. Consider also the sheer scale of this interface. Because of the millions of tiny alveoli, the internal surface area of your lungs is immense. If you were to flatten out all the air sacs in your chest, they would cover a tennis court. You have a tennis court hidden inside your ribcage, solely dedicated to catching oxygen. And finally, consider the water. The surfaces of the alveoli must be kept moist for diffusion to work. But water has surface tension. It wants to bead up and collapse the tiny sacs. To prevent this, your lungs produce a detergent-like substance called surfactant. It breaks the tension, keeping the alveoli open and fluffy. Without it, every breath would be a struggle to pop the lungs open, a struggle premature babies often face until their lungs mature. So, the oxygen is in. It has crossed the barrier. It has turned the blood from dark crimson to bright scarlet. The spark is present. But a spark alone cannot make a fire. You cannot burn oxygen in a vacuum. You need something to burn. You need fuel. You need matter. The body must now turn its attention to the physical world, to the bread, the fruit, and the water. It must take the solid objects of the environment and break them down into liquid energy that can enter the blood and meet the oxygen. We are ready to study the disassembly line. So, take another deep breath. Feel the diaphragm flatten. Feel the cool air wash over the tennis court of your lungs. Feel the oxygen entering the stream. You are fully aerated. You are prepared. When we meet next, we will follow the food. We will study the digestive system. For now, just breathe. In and out. Lesson 18. The Digestive System. Welcome back to our quiet sanctuary. Settle yourself now. Let the rhythm of your breathing continue, steady and slow, just as we practiced in our last session. In that lesson, we filled the body with air. We captured the oxygen, the spark needed to ignite the fires of life. But as we know, a spark cannot burn in a vacuum. To create warmth, to create movement, to create thought, the body needs something to burn. It needs fuel. Tonight, we turn our attention to the earth. We turn to the physical matter we take from the world, the bread, the fruit, the water, and we explore how the body performs the ultimate alchemy. We are going to study the digestive system. It is a disassembly line of extraordinary precision, a 30-foot-long river that winds through the center of you, breaking down the complex structures of nature into the simple building blocks of you. So, let your muscles relax and let us follow the journey of nourishment. To understand digestion, you must first visualize the architecture. The digestive system is technically known as the alimentary canal, or the gastrointestinal tract. It is, in essence, a single, continuous muscular tube that runs from the mouth to the end of the line. Here is a thought to hold. Because this tube is open at both ends, the food passing through it is technically never inside your body. It is in a tunnel running through your body. The goal of digestion is to break that food down small enough so that it can cross the wall of the tunnel and truly enter the bloodstream. Until that happens, a sandwich is just a passenger. The journey begins in the mouth. This is the only part of the process where you have full, conscious control. We call it ingestion. But immediately, the mechanical breakdown begins. Your teeth are designed to smash and grind, increasing the surface area of the food. Meanwhile, your salivary glands flood the chamber with saliva. This is not just water. It contains enzymes like amylase, which immediately begin to chemically dissolve carbohydrates. The tongue, a strong muscular manipulator, rolls the food into a soft, round ball called a bolus, preparing it for the drop. When you swallow, the bolus enters the esophagus. This is a 10-inch chute leading to the stomach. But gravity is not the force moving the food. Even if you are hanging upside down, the food would still reach your stomach. This is because of a powerful, rhythmic wave of muscle contraction called peristalsis. Imagine squeezing a tube of toothpaste from the bottom up. That is peristalsis. The ring of muscle behind the food squeezes tight, while the muscle in front relaxes, pushing the bolus forward. This rhythmic squeezing continues throughout the entire length of the system. It is a slow, silent pulse that never stops. The bolus passes through a valve and falls into the stomach. The stomach is a J-shaped storage tank, but it is also a violent churning machine. It has an extra layer of muscle running diagonally, allowing it to twist and wring itself, physically pulverizing the food. But the real power of the stomach is chemical. The lining secretes hydrochloric acid, a substance so corrosive it could dissolve a metal nail. This acid serves two purposes. It kills almost all bacteria entering with the food, and it denatures proteins, unraveling their complex shapes so they can be cut apart. To protect itself from this acid, the stomach produces a thick, protective coat of mucus. If this coat is breached, an ulcer forms. By the time the stomach is done, the food is no longer food. It has been transformed into a creamy, acidic paste called chyme. Now, the chyme is squirted, little by little, into the small intestine. Do not let the name fool you. It is small, only in diameter. In length, it is the longest section of the tube, winding for roughly 20 feet inside your abdomen. This is where the magic happens. This is where digestion is completed and absorption begins. The first section, the duodenum, acts as a mixing bowl. Here, the acidic chyme is blasted with secretions from two vital accessory organs. The liver, the body's chemical plant, sends bile. Bile is a green, alkaline fluid stored in the gallbladder. Its job is to emulsify fats, breaking large oil droplets into tiny ones, just like dish soap breaks up grease on a pan. Simultaneously, the pancreas pumps in a cocktail of powerful enzymes to break down sugars, fats, and proteins, as well as bicarbonate to neutralize the burning stomach acid. Once the chemical bath is complete, the nutrients are ready to be taken in. The walls of the small intestine are not smooth, they are pleated and folded. And if you look closer, those folds are covered in millions of tiny, finger-like projections called villi. And if you looked at a single cell on one of those villi, its surface would be covered in even smaller projections called microvilli. This fractal-like geometry serves one purpose: surface area. If you smoothed out all the folds and villi of your small intestine, it would cover the size of a tennis court. You have a tennis court inside your belly, waiting to catch every molecule of glucose, every amino acid, and every fatty acid that drifts by. This is where the transfer happens. The nutrients cross the barrier and enter the blood, finally becoming part of the body. What remains, the fiber, the water, and the indigestible solids, moves into the large intestine, or colon. This tube is wider and shorter, framing the small intestine like a picture frame. The colon's job is reclamation. It gently squeezes the leftovers, sucking the water back out and returning it to the body. This turns the liquid waste into solid waste. But the colon is not empty. It is home to a vast ecosystem of bacteria, trillions of them, known as the gut microbiome. These bacteria are your guests, and they pay rent. In exchange for a warm home and your leftovers, they synthesize vital vitamins for you, like vitamin K and certain B vitamins, which your own cells cannot make. They also help train your immune system. There is a quiet symbiosis happening in the dark, a partnership between you and the microscopic world that keeps you healthy. Think of the transformation that has occurred. You ate an apple. That apple was a foreign object, a structure of plant cells and sunlight. Your digestive system mechanically smashed it, chemically dissolved it, and sorted through the wreckage to find the useful parts. It took the sugar for energy. It took the water for hydration. It took the fiber to clean the pipe. And then, most miraculously of all, it sent those parts to your cells to be rebuilt. The protein in the apple becomes the protein in your muscle. The energy in the apple becomes the electrical thought in your brain. You are literally transfiguring the world into yourself. As the saying goes, you are what you eat. Anatomically, this is not a metaphor. It is a literal description of biological synthesis. So, the fuel has been delivered. The glucose is in the blood. The amino acids are circulating. The fats are packaged and moving. The digestive system has done its job. It has provided the raw materials. But a pile of lumber is not a house, and a tank of gasoline is not movement. We have the oxygen from the lungs. We have the nutrients from the gut. Now, we must ask, how do the cells actually use them? How do they burn this fuel to create the energy that powers your life? How do they build new structures? We must look at the fire itself. We must look at the chemistry of energy. We are ready to study metabolism. So, let your belly relax. Visualize that slow, rhythmic wave of peristalsis moving gently through you, a silent tide managing your nourishment while you sleep. The work is being done. You are being fed. When we meet next, we will light the furnace. Lesson 19: Metabolism and Nutrition. Welcome back. Come into the warmth of our study. Take a moment to feel the temperature of the room, and then feel the warmth radiating from your own skin. In our previous sessions, we have acted as gatherers. We breathed in the oxygen from the atmosphere, capturing the spark of life in our lungs. We consumed the food from the earth, breaking it down in the digestive tract to harvest the fuel. But gathering the wood and the air is not enough. To heat a house, you must light the fire. Tonight, we are going to study the internal flame that keeps you alive. We are going to explore metabolism. This is often a misunderstood word, used only when talking about diet or weight. But biologically, metabolism is the sum total of every chemical reaction occurring in your body. It is the hum of the engine. It is the process that turns a sandwich into a thought and a breath of air into a heartbeat. So, settle in and let us watch the fire burn. Metabolism is a coin with two sides. It is a constant cycle of creation and destruction, happening simultaneously in every one of your trillions of cells. The first side is called catabolism. This comes from the Greek word for downward. Catabolism is the process of breaking things down. It is the demolition crew. When your cells take a large, complex molecule, like a sugar from an apple or a protein from a steak, and break it apart into smaller pieces, they release energy. The chemical bonds holding those molecules together snap, and the potential energy stored inside is unleashed. The second side is called anabolism. This is the process of building things up. It is the construction crew. Your cells take the small pieces, the amino acids, the simple sugars, and use energy to stitch them together into new, complex structures. This is how you build muscle proteins, how you repair a scratch on your skin, and how you manufacture the hormones we discussed earlier. Catabolism provides the energy, anabolism spends it. They are the yin and yang of biological existence. But the cell cannot use the energy from a sugar molecule directly. It is too explosive, too raw. It would be like trying to charge your phone with a lightning bolt. The cell needs a way to capture that energy and store it in small, usable packets. It needs a currency. That currency is a molecule called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. I want you to visualize ATP as a fully charged battery. It has 3 phosphate groups attached to it, hence triphosphate. The bond holding the third phosphate is like a compressed spring. It is bursting with energy. When the cell needs to do work, like contracting a muscle or pumping ions, it snaps that third phosphate off. The spring releases, the energy is used, and the molecule becomes ADP. Adenosine diphosphate. It is now a dead battery. The entire goal of metabolism, the entire reason you eat and breathe, is simply to recharge that battery. Your body is constantly taking ADP and attaching that third phosphate back on to create ATP, over and over again. It is a cycle that turns millions of times per second. So, how does the body actually recharge these batteries? It uses a process called cellular respiration. This is the central furnace of life. It begins with glucose, the simple sugar carried in your blood. The glucose enters the cell and undergoes a process called glycolysis. This happens in the cytoplasm, the jelly-like fluid of the cell. It is a quick, rough process that breaks the glucose in half. It produces a tiny amount of ATP, but it does not require oxygen. It is primitive, but if oxygen is present, the broken glucose pieces are ushered into the holy of holies, the mitochondria. We visited the mitochondria in Lesson 3, calling them the power plants. Now we see why. Inside the inner chamber of the mitochondria, a cycle of reactions called the Krebs cycle strips the glucose down to nothing. It pulls off the electrons, the tiny subatomic particles that hold the energy. It loads these electrons onto carrier molecules, which are like wheelbarrows. These wheelbarrows rush to the inner membrane of the mitochondria, where the final and most beautiful stage occurs. the electron transport chain. Visualize a row of water wheels on a river. The electrons are poured over these wheels, spinning them. This spinning energy is used to pump protons across a membrane, creating a massive pressure dam. Finally, the protons rush back through a turbine-like machine called ATP synthase. As this turbine spins, it snaps phosphates back onto ADPs, generating massive amounts of ATP. And what happens to the electrons at the end of the line? They are caught by oxygen. Oxygen sits at the end of the assembly line, catching the used electrons and combining with hydrogen to form pure, harmless water. If you stop breathing, there is no one to catch the electrons. The line backs up, the turbine stops, the batteries die, and life ends. It is that simple. You breathe to keep the turbine spinning. This furnace is always burning. Even now, as you lie perfectly still, you are consuming energy. This is called your basal metabolic rate, or BMR. It is the energy cost of just existing. It is the cost of keeping the heart beating, the liver filtering, and the brain dreaming. For most people, this accounts for the vast majority of the calories they burn in a day, and there is a byproduct to all this industry. No engine is 100% efficient. A car engine produces heat as it runs. So do you. Roughly 60% of the energy released from burning glucose is lost as heat. But lost is the wrong word. This heat is what keeps you warm. It is the reason you have a body temperature of 98.6 degrees. You are heated from the inside out by the friction of your own chemistry. When you get cold, your thyroid tells your cells to be less efficient, to waste more energy as heat, turning up the internal thermostat. Think about the food you eat in this light. A piece of bread is not just matter, it is trapped sunlight. The plant used the sun's energy to forge the chemical bonds of the sugar. When you eat it, you break those bonds and release that sun energy to power your own life. You are, quite literally, powered by the stars. So, the fire burns. The glucose is disassembled. The energy is captured in the battery of ATP. The water is created, but burning fuel always creates exhaust. It creates ash. When we break down proteins, we create nitrogenous waste, stuff like urea and ammonia. These are toxic. If they build up in the blood, they will poison the brain and stop the heart. We cannot keep the ash in the furnace. We need a way to filter the blood, to remove the chemical debris of metabolism and wash it out of the body. We need a filtration plant. We need the kidneys. So, visualize the warmth of your metabolism. Feel it in your chest and your belly. It is a gentle, life-sustaining fire. You are energized. You are warm. When we meet next, we will clean the system. We will study the urinary system. For now, rest in the warmth. Lesson 20. The urinary system. Welcome back. Step into the quiet. Let the door close softly behind you. In our last session, we stood before the internal fire of metabolism. We watched as the cells burned glucose to generate the heat and energy that sustains your life. We marveled at the efficiency of that furnace. But as we know from the world around us, no fire burns perfectly clean. To burn fuel is to create ash. To build something new is to create scrap. As your body operates, moment by moment, it produces chemical waste, nitrogen, urea, ammonia byproducts that are toxic if allowed to remain. If the blood is the river of life, it must remain pure. It cannot be allowed to stagnate or become polluted. Tonight, we turn our attention to the body's silent filtration plant. We are going to study the urinary system. It is the guardian of your internal chemistry, a system that ceaselessly scrubs the blood clean, ensuring that the waters of your being remain clear and balanced. So, settle in and let us follow the flow of purification. The urinary system is compact, efficient, and deeply tucked away. Its stars are the kidneys. You have two of them, each shaped like a reddish-brown bean, roughly the size of a bar of soap. They sit surprisingly high in your back, protected by the lower ribs, nestled against the heavy muscles of your spine. They are retroperitoneal, meaning they sit behind the abdominal cavity, separated from the chaos of the digestive tract. They operate in their own quiet space. Attached to each kidney is a long, slender tube called a ureter. These tubes are not just passive hoses, they are muscular. They pulse rhythmically, milking the urine down away from the kidneys, ensuring that gravity is not the only force at work. These tubes lead to the urinary bladder. This is a hollow, muscular storage tank that sits on the floor of your pelvis. It is a marvel of flexibility. When it is empty, it collapses into folds called rugae, looking like a deflated balloon. But as it fills, it expands, smoothing out its walls and rising up into the abdominal cavity. It can hold roughly a pint of fluid comfortably, acting as a reservoir so that you are not constantly tethered to the bathroom. Finally, a single tube, the urethra, conducts the fluid out of the body. In this way, the system is a simple plumbing circuit. 2 filters, 2 transport pipes, 1 holding tank, and 1 drain. But the magic lies not in the plumbing, but in the filter itself. To understand how the kidney actually works, we must zoom in. If you were to slice a kidney open, you would find it packed with over 1 million microscopic processing units called nephrons. The nephron is the true worker. It is the functional unit of the kidney. The logic of the nephron is fascinating. Usually, when we clean a room, we walk around and pick up the trash. The kidney does the opposite. It takes everything out of the room, the furniture, the clothes, the valuables, and the trash, throws it all onto the front lawn, and then carefully brings back only the things it wants to keep. Here is how it happens. Blood enters the kidney through the renal artery, rushing in under high pressure. It flows into a tiny ball of capillaries called the glomerulus. This ball acts like a sieve or a coffee filter. The walls of these capillaries have tiny holes. The pressure forces the fluid part of the blood out through these holes. Water, sugar, salt, amino acids, vitamins, and waste products are all pushed out. This fluid is now called filtrate. The only things that stay behind in the blood are the large items that cannot fit through the holes, the red blood cells, and the large proteins. Effectively, the kidney has just dumped the plasma out of the bloodstream. This filtrate is caught in a cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule, which funnel it into a long, twisting tube. This is where the reclamation begins. As the fluid flows down the proximal convoluted tubule, the cells lining the wall start grabbing the good stuff. They grab the glucose. They grab the amino acids. They grab the sodium. They pump these treasures back into the blood vessels that hug the tube. We need this, the body says. Don't throw this away. Then, the fluid dives deep into the kidney through a U-turn called the loop of Henle. This loop is a master of water management. Through a complex game of salt gradients, it forces water to leave the tube and re-enter the blood. It concentrates the waste. This is crucial. Without this loop, you would lose so much water you would die of dehydration in hours. Finally, the fluid reaches the distal convoluted tubule. This is the fine-tuning station. Here, the kidney makes its final decisions based on what the body needs at that exact moment. Is your blood pressure too low? It reabsorbs more salt. Is your blood too acidic? It secretes hydrogen ions into the tube. It adjusts the chemistry with exquisite precision. What remains at the end of the tube is everything the body rejected. The excess water, the urea, the toxins, the drug residues. This is urine. It flows into a collecting duct, down the ureter, and out of the nephron forever. Consider the sheer volume of this work. Your kidneys filter your entire blood volume roughly 60 times a day. Every drop of blood in your body passes through these filters every 45 minutes. They process about 180 liters of fluid daily, but only about 1 or 2 liters leave as urine. The rest, 99%, is returned to the blood, cleaned and balanced. This system is the ultimate guardian of homeostasis. We spoke of homeostasis in Lesson 1 as the body's balance. The kidney is the organ that maintains that balance. If you eat a bag of salty chips, the sodium level in your blood rises. The kidney senses this and dumps the excess salt into the urine. If you drink a gallon of water, the blood becomes too dilute. The kidney senses this and lets the water pass through, creating pale, clear urine. If you are dehydrated, the kidney holds onto every single drop, making the urine dark and concentrated. It also controls your blood pressure. The kidney releases an enzyme called renin. When your blood pressure drops, renin sets off a chain reaction that constricts your blood vessels and tells the body to hold onto salt and water, raising the pressure back up. The kidney is not just a filter, it is a command center for your cardiovascular health. Think of the clarity this provides. The brain requires a stable chemical environment to think. The heart requires a specific balance of electrolytes to beat. The kidney ensures that environment exists. It is the silent servant that allows the masters to do their work. So, the blood has been scrubbed, the waste has been removed, the volume has been adjusted. We have ensured that the chemical composition of the blood is pure, but we have touched on a concept here that requires a deeper look. We spoke of water moving back and forth. We spoke of salt. We spoke of acid. The human body is mostly water, an internal ocean enclosed by skin. The management of this ocean, keeping it from becoming too salty, too acidic, or too dry, is a distinct and vital science. It is not just about filtering waste. It is about the physics of fluids. We need to understand the balance of the electrolytes, the charged particles that act as the batteries of life. We are ready to study fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance. So, visualize the clear, clean stream leaving the kidney. The toxins are gone. The water is pure. You are internally cleansed. When we meet next, we will study the ocean within. For now, rest in the clarity. Lesson 21. Fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance. Welcome back. It is good to have you here in our quiet space. Let the stillness of the room settle around you like a soft, heavy coat. In our last session, we stood beside the body's filtration plant, the kidneys. We watched as they tirelessly scrubbed the blood, removing the toxins and the ash of metabolism. We saw how they act as the gatekeepers of our internal chemistry. Tonight, we are going to look deeper at what exactly they are guarding. We often think of ourselves as solid beings, bone and muscle, skin and hair. But the truth is far more fluid. If we strip away the dry land of our anatomy, we find that we are walking oceans. You are mostly water. Roughly 60% of you is liquid. Tonight, we are going to study how the body manages this internal sea. We will explore the delicate dance of salt and water, the batteries that power your nerves, and the strict chemical balance that keeps the ocean habitable. So, let yourself drift, and let us examine the fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance. To understand the body, you must first understand compartments. The water inside you is not sloshing around in one giant tank. It is carefully divided into two main territories. The largest territory is the intracellular fluid, ICF. This is the water inside your cells. Imagine billions of tiny microscopic water balloons packed tight together. About 2/3 of all the water in your body is locked away inside these balloons. It is a private reserve, a stable environment where the machinery of the cell can operate in peace. The second territory is the extracellular fluid, ECF. This is everything outside the cells. It is the environment the cells live in. This territory is further divided into two provinces: the plasma, the fluid part of your blood, and the interstitial fluid, the fluid in the spaces between the cells. Think of the interstitial fluid as a swamp or a bath. Your cells are constantly bathing in this fluid, taking what they need and dumping their waste back into it. These compartments are separated by membranes, but they are not isolated. Water is constantly moving between them, but water is lazy. It does not move on its own. It follows a rule. It follows the salt. This is the principle of osmosis. Imagine a membrane that lets water through but blocks salt. On one side, you have fresh water. On the other, you have salty water. Nature hates imbalance. It wants to even things out. Since the salt cannot move to the fresh side, the water moves to the salty side to dilute it. Water follows salt. This simple rule dictates your entire existence. If you eat a bag of salty chips, the salt enters your blood, the ECF. The water inside your cells sees this salty environment and rushes out to dilute it. Your cells shrink. The brain senses this cellular shrinking and triggers the sensation of thirst. You drink, the balance is restored, and the cells swell back to their normal size. But the water is not just plain H2O. It is a solution. Dissolved within it are minerals we call electrolytes. These are substances that conduct electricity when dissolved in water. You know their names: sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. These are not just nutritional buzzwords, they are the batteries of life. Sodium is the king of the extracellular fluid. It lives outside the cell. It is the magnet that holds onto water. Where sodium goes, fluid follows. It is vital for blood pressure and for the initial spark of a nerve impulse. Potassium is the king of the intracellular fluid. It lives inside the cell. It is the force that resets the nerve after it fires. It is crucial for the heart. If potassium levels in the blood get too high or too low, the electrical rhythm of the heart fails, leading to cardiac arrest. This is why the body guards potassium levels with obsessive jealousy. Calcium is the hardener of bones, yes, but in the fluid, it acts as the trigger. As we learned in the muscle lesson, calcium is the key that unlocks contraction. Without free-floating calcium, your muscles would be paralyzed. The body manages these levels through hormones. We met aldosterone briefly before. It comes from the adrenal cortex and tells the kidney, save the sodium, throw away the potassium. By saving sodium, it indirectly saves water, because water follows salt, raising your blood pressure. We also have antidiuretic hormone, ADH, from the pituitary. ADH tells the kidney to open the floodgates and reabsorb pure water, preventing dehydration. But there is a third balance, perhaps the most critical of all: pH balance. The fluids of the human body must maintain a very specific level of acidity. We measure this on the pH scale. The magic number for human blood is 7.4. It is slightly alkaline. The tolerance is incredibly tight. If your blood pH drops below 7.35, you enter acidosis. If it rises above 7.45, you enter alkalosis. If it goes below 6.8 or above 7.8, the chemical bonds of your proteins break, enzymes stop working, and you die. So, where does the acid come from? It comes from the fire. Metabolism, as we discussed, produces waste. Breaking down glucose produces CO2, which turns into carbonic acid in the blood. Breaking down proteins produces phosphoric and sulfuric acids. You are essentially an acid-producing machine. To keep you from burning up from the inside, the body has 3 lines of defense. The first line is the chemical buffer systems. These are molecules floating in your blood that act like sponges. If there is too much acid, hydrogen ions, the sponge soaks them up. If there is too little, the sponge squeezes them out. The most important one is the bicarbonate buffer system. It works instantly, in a fraction of a second, to neutralize sudden shifts. The second line is the respiratory system. We mentioned this with the lungs. Carbon dioxide is essentially an acid in disguise. When you exercise and build up acid in your blood, your brain detects the drop in pH and tells you to breathe faster. By exhaling more CO2, you are literally blowing off the acid, raising your pH back to normal. This takes 1 to 3 minutes to kick in. The third line, the heavy artillery, is the renal system, the kidneys. They are slow. It takes hours or days for them to act. But they are the most powerful. While the lungs can only get rid of volatile acid, CO2, the kidneys can physically remove metabolic acids, phosphoric, uric, lactic, and urinate them out of the body. They can also manufacture new bicarbonate sponges to replenish the supply. They are the ultimate cleaners. This balance is why you feel so terrible when you have the flu and are vomiting. You are losing stomach acid, throwing your body into alkalosis, or why you feel weak when you have diarrhea. You are losing bicarbonate, throwing your body into acidosis. The feeling of sickness is often just the sensation of your pH drifting out of that narrow, safe lane of 7.4. It is also why electrolytes are marketed to athletes. When you sweat, you are not just losing water, you are losing the salt that holds the water. Drinking pure water afterwards is not enough, because without the salt, the water will not stay in your blood. It will just pass right through you. You need the minerals to anchor the fluid. Think of the elegance of this triad. The water provides the volume for blood to flow. The electrolytes provide the spark for nerves to fire. The pH provides the stable environment for enzymes to work. It is a chemistry set that constantly adjusts itself, correcting for every meal you eat, every breath you take, and every mile you run. So, the internal ocean is stable, the tides are managed, the salt is balanced, the acidity is neutralized, the individual organism is perfectly maintained. But biology has a goal beyond the survival of the individual. Nature is not content with just keeping you alive. It wants to continue the chain. It wants to bridge the gap between this generation and the next. We have spent 21 lessons studying how a single human body functions. Now, we must ask, how does this body replicate itself? How do we pass these blueprints, the instructions for the heart, the brain, the kidney, onto the future? We are ready to study the only system that is optional for you, but essential for the species. We are ready to study reproduction. So, visualize the calm waters within you. The internal sea is still. The storm of acidity is quelled. You are balanced. You are ready. When we meet next, we will look at the genesis of life. For now, rest in the equilibrium. Lesson 22. The Reproductive System. Welcome back. Come into the quiet. Let the world outside recede, leaving only the steady rhythm of your own existence. In our journey so far, we have explored 21 distinct systems. We have looked at the heart that beats for you, the lungs that breathe for you, and the kidneys that clean for you. All of these systems have one thing in common. They are selfish. They exist solely to keep you, the individual organism, alive. If you lost your heart or your liver, you would cease to exist. But tonight, we turn to a system that is different. We turn to the only system in the body that you can live without. You could remove it entirely, and you would survive just fine. It is not essential for the individual. It is essential for the species. It is the bridge between the past and the future. Tonight, we study the reproductive system. It is the biological promise that the flame of life will not go out when our own time ends. So, settle in and let us look at the mechanics of creation. To understand reproduction, we must look at the math of life. Every cell in your body, your skin cells, your liver cells, your bone cells, contains 46 chromosomes. This is the full instruction manual for building a human being. We call this the diploid number. But the reproductive system does something unique. It produces specialized cells called gametes. In the male, this is the sperm. In the female, this is the egg or ovum. These cells are different because they only have half the instructions. They hold 23 chromosomes. We call this the haploid number. Why? Because if a sperm with 46 chromosomes met an egg with 46 chromosomes, the resulting child would have 92, which is biological chaos. So, the body performs a special type of division called meiosis. It shuffles the deck of your DNA, takes half of it, and packages it into a gamete. The sperm is one half of a locket, the egg is the other. They wander the world separately, useless on their own, seeking only to find their match and restore the whole. Let us look at the machinery that creates these halves, beginning with the male reproductive system. The primary factory is the testes. The testes are kept outside the body in a sac of skin called the scrotum. This is not an accident of design, it is a necessity of physics. Sperm production is incredibly sensitive to heat. It cannot happen at normal body temperature, it is too hot. So, the testes hang outside, kept roughly 3 degrees cooler than the rest of you. Muscles in the scrotum raise or lower them, constantly adjusting their distance from the body to maintain this perfect climate. Inside, the testes are miles of microscopic tubes called seminiferous tubules. This is the assembly line. Here, millions of sperm are manufactured every day. A sperm cell is essentially a stripped-down DNA delivery rocket. It has a head containing the genetic cargo, a midpiece packed with mitochondria to provide energy, and a long tail, or flagellum, for propulsion. Once built, they travel to the epididymis, a coiled tube where they learn to swim. They wait there until they are called upon to travel up the vas deferens and out through the urethra, propelled by a fluid cocktail from the prostate and seminal vesicles that provides them with the sugar and protection they need for their journey. Now, let us turn to the female reproductive system. This system is more complex because it has a dual role. It must produce the gamete, but it must also house the developing life. The primary factory here is the ovary. Unlike the male, who produces sperm daily, the female is born with her entire supply of eggs already in the vaults. They lie dormant for years until puberty wakes them up. Once a month, in a cycle driven by the moon-like rhythm of hormones, one egg is selected. It matures and bursts forth from the ovary, an event called ovulation. It is caught by the delicate, waving fingers of the fallopian tube. This tube is the meeting place. It is here, slowly drifting down toward the uterus, that fertilization must happen if it is to happen at all. The egg travels to the uterus, or womb. This is a hollow, muscular organ shaped like an inverted pear. Its lining, the endometrium, is a tragic optimist. Every single month, it builds itself up. It becomes thick, plush, and rich with blood vessels, preparing a nursery just in case a fertilized egg arrives. If no egg arrives, the body realizes the nursery is unnecessary. It sheds the lining, resulting in menstruation, and then immediately begins building it again for the next cycle. It is a ceaseless preparation for potential life. The architects of this entire process are the sex hormones. We spoke of the endocrine system earlier. Here is its most dramatic work. In the male, testosterone is the driver. It builds the muscle, deepens the voice, and drives the ceaseless production of sperm. It is a steady, constant force. In the female, the dance is between estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is the builder. It creates the lining and matures the egg. Progesterone is the maintainer. It quiets the uterus and keeps the nursery intact. These hormones rise and fall in a complex, interweaving wave that dictates the menstrual cycle. Consider the journey of the sperm. It is an odyssey. Relative to its size, the sperm must swim the equivalent of several miles upstream, fighting the current, navigating the maze of the uterus, and surviving the immune system of the female, which sees it as an invader. Of the millions that start, only a few hundred reach the egg, and when they meet, the egg is protected by a tough outer shell. The sperm must work together to weaken this shell. Finally, one single sperm breaks through. The moment it enters, the egg releases a shockwave, a chemical change that instantly hardens the shell, locking all other sperm out. The door is closed. The two nuclei, the two halves of the locket, find each other in the center of the cell and fuse. At that instant, 23 chromosomes plus 23 chromosomes becomes 46. The diploid number is restored. A unique genetic combination, one that has never existed before in the history of the universe and will never exist again, is created. We call this single cell a zygote. This system connects us to the deep time of evolution. The drive to reproduce is the oldest drive in biology. It is older than the brain, older than the heart. It is the fundamental definition of life. Life wants to make more life. It also highlights the biological investment of the sexes. The male strategy is volume millions of cells, low energy cost per cell, constant production. The female strategy is quality one cell, massive energy investment, carefully guarded. Think about the traits you possess, the color of your eyes, the shape of your nose, perhaps a talent for music or a predisposition for math. These are not random. They are the result of that moment of fusion. You are a mosaic of your ancestors. The reproductive system is the mechanism of inheritance. It is how your great-grandmother's smile ended up on your face. So, the fusion has happened. The spark has jumped the gap. The zygote exists, a single, microscopic cell floating in the vastness of the fallopian tube. It is a complete human blueprint, but it is just one cell. It is smaller than a grain of sand. How do we get from that single dot to the trillions of cells that make up the adult standing before me? How does that one cell know to become a heart, and another to become a brain, and another to become a fingernail? We have reached the final chapter of our story. We must watch the unfolding. We must watch the construction of the body from scratch. We are ready to study development. So, let the wonder of that union settle in your mind. Two halves becoming whole. The potential for everything contained in the microscopic. You are the result of such a moment. When we meet next, we will finish our journey. We will watch the child grow. For now, rest in the continuity of life. Lesson 23. Development and Inheritance. Welcome. You have made it. Come into our quiet space one last time. Let the door close softly, sealing us in this sanctuary of learning. We have traveled a long road together. We began as observers of the invisible, looking at atoms and molecules. We built cells, wove tissues, constructed organs, and wired systems. We have explored the mechanics of every beat, every breath, and every thought. But all of these systems, the heart, the brain, the bones, had to come from somewhere. They did not just appear, they unfolded. Tonight, in our final lesson, we are going to watch the story of becoming. We are going to witness the miracle of how a single, microscopic cell transforms into a complex human being made of trillions of cells. And we will look at the silent code, the inheritance, that determines why you are uniquely you. So, settle in for the last chapter of our story. Let us watch the cycle complete itself. Our story begins exactly where the last lesson ended, with the zygote. This is the fertilized egg, a single cell containing the full 46 chromosomes of human DNA. It is floating in the fallopian tube, roughly the size of a grain of sand. Almost immediately, the zygote begins a process called cleavage. This is a frenzy of division. The cell splits into 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. But curiously, it does not get bigger. The giant cell is simply carving itself up into smaller and smaller bricks, like a sculptor dividing a block of clay. By the time it reaches the uterus, about 3 or 4 days later, it has become a solid ball of cells called a morula, Latin for mulberry, which is exactly what it looks like. But then a change occurs. The cells in the center begin to pull apart, creating a hollow, fluid-filled sphere. This structure is called the blastocyst. The blastocyst is an architect with a plan. It has an outer shell, called the trophoblast, which will become the support system. And huddled inside on one side is a cluster of cells called the inner cell mass. This tiny cluster is precious. These are the stem cells that will actually become the embryo. They are the you waiting to happen. About a week after fertilization, the blastocyst performs a critical maneuver: implantation. It presses against the plush, blood-rich lining of the uterus and literally burrows into it. It digs in. If this docking maneuver fails, the pregnancy ends before it begins. But if it succeeds, the chemical signals change. The woman's body is notified. We are building. The menstrual cycle stops. The resources are diverted. The construction project begins. Now, we witness the most mysterious event in biology: gastruation. Up until now, all the cells have been identical, but suddenly they begin to fold and slide over one another, organizing themselves into 3 distinct layers. These are the germ layers, and they act as the primary blueprints for every tissue in the body. The outer layer is the ectoderm. These cells will eventually fold inward to form your nervous system, your brain and spine, and your epidermis, or skin. It is poetic, isn't it? The part of you that thinks and the part of you that touches the world come from the same origin. The middle layer is the mesoderm. These cells will migrate to become your muscles, your bones, your blood, and your heart. They are the structure and the engine. The inner layer is the endoderm. These cells will curl up to form the lining of your gut, your lungs, and your digestive organs. While the embryo builds itself, it needs life support. It needs a lung to breathe for it and a kidney to clean for it. So, a temporary organ grows an organ that belongs to both the mother and the child. The placenta. The placenta is a marvel. It is a flat, pancake-shaped organ attached to the uterine wall. The baby connects to it via the umbilical cord. Here is the fascinating part. The mother's blood and the baby's blood never mix. They wash past each other, separated by a thin membrane. Oxygen and nutrients diffuse from the mother's blood into the baby's, and waste products drift the other way. It is a lifeline of pure exchange. By the 9th week, the embryo has formed the rudiments of all its major organs. It is now called a fetus. For the next 7 months, the task is simply growth. The delicate structures harden, the brain wires itself, the heart grows strong. The fetus practices breathing, inhaling amniotic fluid to strengthen its lungs. It sleeps, it wakes, and it waits for the signal to be born. But what determines the shape of this new life? Why does the child have blue eyes or brown hair? Why are they tall or short? This brings us to genetics, the study of inheritance. Deep inside the nucleus of that very first zygote, the DNA was arranged into functional units called genes. You have 2 copies of every gene, one from your mother, one from your father. These copies are called alleles. Sometimes, the 2 alleles are the same, but often they are different. One might say brown eyes, and the other might say blue eyes. How does the body decide? It follows the rules of dominance. Some alleles are loud. They are dominant. If you have even one copy of a dominant allele, like brown eyes, that is the trait you will show. Other alleles are quiet. They are recessive. You will only see a recessive trait like blue eyes, if you inherit two quiet copies, one from mom, one from dad. We must distinguish between two concepts here. Your genotype is the actual genetic code written in your DNA, the secret recipe. Your phenotype is the physical result that the world sees: the brown eyes, the curly hair. You might carry the secret recipe for blue eyes in your genotype, but hide it behind a dominant brown-eyed phenotype, passing the secret on to your children unknowingly. This genetic lottery creates the infinite variety of the human species. Unless you have an identical twin, there has never been a human being with your exact combination of genes, and there never will be again. You are a statistical impossibility, a unique solution to the equation of life. And so, we have come full circle. We started with atoms, the dust of stars. We watched them form molecules, then cells. We watched those cells weave themselves into tissues, and those tissues build the magnificent systems of the body. We watched the heart pump, the lungs breathe, the nerves fire, and the mind awaken. And finally, we watched that body replicate itself, passing the torch to a new generation, ensuring that the story continues. Your body is a masterpiece of cooperation. It is a silent, resilient universe working for you every single second. It does not ask for your attention. It does not ask for your thanks. It simply works, driven by the ancient, unstoppable logic of life. So, as you lie here now, let your mind drift back through the systems. Feel the heavy, warm weight of your skeleton. Feel the soft relaxation of your muscles. Feel the slow, steady rhythm of your heart. Feel the deep, easy tide of your breath. Feel the quiet hum of your metabolism keeping you warm. You are whole, you are functional, you are safe. The lesson is over. The study is complete. All that is left now is to rest. Sleep well, knowing everything is functioning exactly as it should.